Hi, my name is Limcube. I played Breath of the Wild for around 6,000 hours. It basically became my career throughout 2019, going towards the pandemic and then obviously leading up to the release of Tears of the Kingdom. This is what makes me a Breath of the Wild superfan. It's literally my job. It has opened me many doors. I met a ton of friends through the game, and it's overall probably my favorite video game as a whole. Not necessarily to play like casually or to speedrun, but like the entire experience, Breath of the Wild for me is so incredibly special that I'm considering myself a super fan. And if you know me and if you followed this channel for a while, or maybe my second channel, Limcube Plus, you might know where this is going. I want to do a video today where I put all of my thoughts because it's finally been long enough. I feel like we've waited for like 5 months now, right? I think Tears of the Kingdom around now, yeah, it's around out for 5 months now. I was really careful in the past to talk about spoilers on this channel, even though I did show off the occasional speedrun here and there. But today, what I want to do is I literally just want to sit down. I have no idea. I just sat down here on my chair. I made some coffee, so maybe you want to grab some coffee too, because what I want to do today is I want to just sit here and rant about Tears of the Kingdom. The good things, the bad things. I just want to get all of my thoughts out because, like I said, Limcube Plus was a channel where I actually, for 200 days, I uploaded a video every single day talking about what this game right here, Tears of the Kingdom, could possibly be. And what I want to do today is I want to give you all of my thoughts from the positives to the negatives about the game. The video title will probably say something like Breath of the Wild Superfan ranting about Tears of the Kingdom for blah 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 minutes. I don't know how many minutes yet, because I don't have a script. I'm just gonna sit here for maybe 30 minutes, maybe 60 minutes, maybe 200 minutes, and I'm gonna give you the entire dose of thoughts that I have when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom. So this would be an ideal video to put on in the back if you want to listen to my thoughts, somebody who's played this game for probably close to 1,000 hours now, and a shit ton of Breath of the Wild. Maybe, at least me personally, I like comparing my own experiences and my own thoughts to others, especially people who've played this game a lot. So if that's something up your alley, then sure. Maybe put that on the back, because I will be playing the game in the meantime. And we'll just probably be running around, maybe do some speedrunning tricks as we go. But for the most part, there won't be too much interesting on screen. I will be playing because it makes me more comfy. I can kind of go into like talking mode. This is pretty similar to my stream. Twitch.tv/Limcube, where I stream every single day. But this was already way too long. I already wasted 2 minutes introducing myself before we even get into the meat of potatoes. And meat and potatoes, as you see, this is going to be unscripted, unedited. It's just going to be me ranting. Anyways, let's get into it. I want to start with the positives when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom. So let's go back a little bit. Like I said, 200 days before Tears of the Kingdom came out, I actually made a YouTube channel called Limcube Plus, where I sat down every single day and I made a video on Tears of the Kingdom. What I expect Tears of the Kingdom to be like. What I expect the story to be like, which mechanics I expect to change and which ones I expect to stay the same. If you want to, you can still go back to the channel right now, Limcube Plus. I actually have been doing this recently for fun because it's interesting to see what I thought about what the game was going to be like, which things ended up being true. We did a lot of like story speculation there. We got some things right, we got some things wrong, obviously. But because of that channel, I was incredibly hyped. This was probably for me the most hyped for a game I've ever been on release. Elden Ring is probably close second for me. I was really looking forward to that game. When Breath of the Wild initially came out, I actually wasn't really playing a lot of Nintendo games at the time. It was for me like a time where I was mostly focused on my office job, and I didn't really have a lot of time to play Nintendo games, so I kind of missed that game on release and only came back in around 2019 to play the game for the first time. But yeah, this game, incredibly stoked for the release. I don't think there was a game that I've been that excited for. And that makes it even worse that the game, in case if you don't know, was actually leaked around 10 days before the official release. This game was leaked. Twitter was full of, especially my Twitter timeline, because I follow a lot of people that are interested in this game. My Twitter was completely full with Tears of the Kingdom leaks. Wherever you would go, YouTube especially as well, because YouTube algorithm obviously is going to recommend you stuff. You could get easily spoiled. So what I did those 10 days before, I kept uploading things to my Limcube Plus channel, but I completely left social media. And that was kind of awful because I was so excited for the game. I knew many people were already playing it right now, but I wanted to save myself for my stream. I wanted to officially stream the game on release. I didn't want to get banned by Nintendo. And that's why, for me, it was kind of an interesting time. I kind of just disappeared from my online presence and waited. And I was very eager. The only spoiler that I saw, and we will talk about that a lot more later, was that you can actually play the game in the intro. That you and Zelda can head down under Hyrule Castle and investigate. And this is actually, I mean, to an extent, playable. Now, this is probably another good time to mention that this will obviously not be spoiler-free. This will be the exact opposite. We'll be talking about every single thing in the game, every small mechanic, every story bit, every gameplay bit, because of how much I play the game, and I want to discuss everything, so just as a last warning. Anyway, those 10 days were awfully slow, and they finally pass, and I think May 12th finally rolls around. I go live, and I play Tears of the Kingdom for the first time, and obviously I start up in that intro section. I immediately look into the game's controls. Do they still feel similar? Breath of the Wild kind of had this history of people saying it has quite difficult, a pretty difficult control scheme, and I definitely agree. There's quite a few buttons that you have to press in specific ways to get specific results. For example, from crouching to weapon throwing. I mean, this game is material throwing. This game, if anything, probably ramped it up a little bit more. It has things like using one button for two things. Like if you're in the air, you can use the R button to dive. You can use the R button on the ground to throw your weapon. Control scheme, definitely a little bit on the difficult side. But I immediately felt back at home when playing through the intro. Everything felt familiar, and I obviously you get set up with this story that the confirmation is finally there. This game will be talking about the Zonai and the ancient history of Hyrule, and I was incredibly excited to see that Zelda was basically giving us kind of like an introduction to what this game is going to be about, the imprisoning war, the Zonai, etc. as we head down towards the castle. Obviously, for most people who had followed the game's, not necessarily development, but the game's like run up to its release, were already familiar where this was going because they had seen the original trailer with Link and Zelda heading down to castle, finding mummified Ganondorf, and Ganondorf waking up. I actually briefly want to talk about this because I still get that question quite a bit. This is already going so off the rails. Like, I have some notes on the right. This is probably going to be like a 3-hour video at this point. I hope you don't mind. Like I said, this was going to be a straight up rant with my thoughts on the game. Right, so a lot of people still ask me, so once you go down there with Zelda and you end up meeting mummified Ganondorf, why does he actually wake up exactly when you and Zelda head down there? How does that make any sense? And they think it's just a convenient timing. I thought about that at the beginning myself. I was kind of confused. So is the timing just perfect? But no, it doesn't actually make sense. We can talk about that later when we talk about the story section, but this is something I wanted to address because people keep bringing it up. The reason that the second they go down there, Ganondorf actually becomes free is because that's the moment where Rauru, who's obviously sealing Ganondorf at the time, is basically letting go. He knows his time is over. He doesn't need to seal anymore. He can give up because he is about to set the events into motion that we basically play through in this game. Now, that being said, I watched that cutscene for the first time. It was incredibly epic. You will, when we talk about speedrunning later, you will hear my thoughts about the long intro cutscene and the intro section later. But for my casual experience, I was incredibly stoked. And you wake up on the Great Sky Island. Great stuff. Now, I'm not going to summarize my entire casual playthrough. I have everything recorded on another YouTube channel called Limcube VOD. If you want to go check out that channel, you can see my entire playthrough from beginning to end. What I wanted to say, though, is that the second I woke up, I immediately tried some other control schemes, such as switching weapons, which is something that you can't do during the intro section, at least not normally. Was greeted with a little bit of a negative reception there, because the quick menu in this game has slowed down quite tremendously. I don't know if this is because of like the way fusion works. Like when you fuse stuff to weapons, it has to maybe load in that many different like sprites. For example, here like the rocket shield. Maybe that's why it slowed down. That was my only negative reception. I thought the frame rate was a little bit laggy, but, and this is the entire setup, from there I was incredibly hooked. And I kind of want to retrace my steps. Like I'm saying, I'm not going to recap my entire casual playthrough, but I just want to tell you how the game got me so hooked. The Great Sky Island was fun. I think the new abilities are amazing. I want to talk about them more, but I want to talk about my quintessential emotion when playing Tears of the Kingdom, which made me fall in love with this game so much when playing it for the first time, and will probably forever stay in my memory as one of the most fun casual playthroughs I've ever had. And that emotion is feeling overwhelmed, but in a positive way. I don't know how to... I mean, I guess overwhelmed, in my mind at least, overwhelmed can be a negative emotion. You are overwhelmed, you don't know what to do, it could stress you out. But to me, that embracing the feeling of being overwhelmed and the feeling of endless discovery was amazing in this game. And what I mean is, I went through the Great Sky Island, which GSI is maybe what I just said. Speedrunners tend to call this the GSI, Great Sky Island. I thought it was cool. I thought the abilities were cool. I didn't really grasp how cool they were going to be later on. I'll talk about story later as well. I finish the Great Sky Island and I land in this pond. And I'm pretty sure I landed actually in this pond here, the bottomless pond, which is pretty funny because I remember back when we were analyzing literally every single frame of the game, this used to be a pond in Breath of the Wild with a big monster camp and a swamp. It's called the bottomless pond now, even though it was called the bottomless swamp in Breath of the Wild, and we were all wondering what happened here. Why is this swamp now a pond? We can talk later about how in some areas Tears of the Kingdom isn't necessarily the most faithful sequel to Breath of the Wild, while still being an amazing game. But at the end of the day, the reason it's water now is just so you can dive in from the Great Sky Island. I landed here, and I made my way down to Lon Lon Ranch. I can remember this very well. I was looking around on the surface, I would see the new Skyview Towers, I would see the shrines, and I was incredibly excited. And one thing that's gonna make even recording this video difficult, and that made it so fun for me, and you've probably heard this from like 700 different reviews, is you have an idea of what you want to do in Tears of the Kingdom. In my case, that idea was to go to Lookout Landing. When you finish the Great Sky Island, the camera clearly pans to Lookout Landing, which is where you are most likely supposed to go to find Zelda. Back then, that's kind of the message that the game sends you. So I go and head to Lookout Landing, but on my way, I see a Bluepea. I know Bluepeas. They're from Breath of the Wild. Back then, I didn't know that these Bluepeas around Hyrule actually will lead you to cave entrances, similar to the spirits in Elden Ring. I probably wanted to chase the Bluepea, and game design's magic works on me. I happen to stumble upon this cave. So this is the first time that I find a cave on the overworld where previously there were no caves. Caves are a new thing. Yes, there were some caves in the Great Sky Island, but I immediately get the idea that there's new caves. I immediately meet a new enemy. So I know there's new enemies now on the surface. Feels pretty cool and refreshing. I finish up the cave, and this is where my first little mind blow happens. I finish up the cave and I go to the Mabe Village Ruins. I know this place. I've speedrun Breath of the Wild for 5,000 hours. Back in the day, there used to be a chest here with 10 ice arrows. Yes, I'm that down bad when it comes to Breath of the Wild knowledge. I know that there used to be a cave here with 10 ice arrows because it might potentially be interesting for speedrunning, and I don't think much of it. And I come by this cave, this well, and suddenly it says Mabe Village Ruins Well. It's a location. Why would this be a dedicated location? It's just a well, right? Like sometimes there might be little Korok seeds in here, but I see this. At this point, I don't know yet that essentially every well in the game, for the most part, I'm pretty sure, has become a little bit of a place to explore, with either resources to pick up, treasures to find, sometimes quests to find, etc. And it's starting to dawn on me. It's starting to dawn on me already how much has changed on the surface. I will get into this more, and I will tell you more what's happened here, because to me, the surface is actually the best new area in Tears of the Kingdom. It's not the depths, it's not the Sky Islands, but to me, the surface was what really hooked me, especially as a Breath of the Wild fan, because of how many things have changed. I don't even know if I used Ascent back then, and nowadays I'm in the habit of actually using Ascent. I will talk about the abilities here in a second. to get out of caves. But back then I probably just climbed back out because it's so easy to forget that you have the ability when you first play the game casually. That being said, I remember this is actually where I died in my casual playthrough because I wanted to be too cool and I took on this camp with basically no weapons at all. I don't know, it was technically my first death because I tried to do a glitch on the Great Sky Island. It didn't work anymore and I died. Good old fold image cancel. Doesn't matter. I fight this camp. Flurry Rush still works. I realized Flurry Rush works kind of differently. We can rant about that a little bit later. I think the Flurry Rush timing in this game has been moved a little bit towards the end of the attack. So I immediately noticed another difference. I take care of this camp. I don't need to do that in this particular file. Topaz arrows. Pretty powerful. We'll talk about stuff like that later as well. But essentially I take care of the camp and I make my way to Lookout Landing. And from here, and this is because I want to move on, otherwise this is actually going to be a 12-hour video because again I'm not going to recap my casual playthrough. From here I reach Lookout Landing, I start playing through the storyline and I get the paraglider, cool stuff. And this is the last point I want to make. Back then I say, I want to go to Rito Village. This is where the first global phenomena is, right? There's stuff going down in Rito Village. And I never make it there for the next 25 hours, because that is the magic of Tears of the Kingdom for me. You want to go to a place, let's say Rito Village, but wait, there's a cave. Wait, there's a monster camp. Wait, there's a tree attacking you. Wait, there's a sky island. Wait, there's a tower. Wait, there's a well with a quest. Oh, now I'm on this quest. I'm following this quest into another well. And suddenly this entire underground cave system is opening up to me. I want to go to the next shrine. Oh, wait, there's a dragon. I want to go to the shrine over here. What's that red stuff on the ground? I wonder... looks like it's one of those chasms. I wonder what's down there. And if you know what's down there, you know how incredibly easy it is to get overwhelmed and sidetracked in this game. But that exactly was what made me so hooked when it comes to playing this game for the first time, that I remember the first week and a half, I woke up, I played Tears of the Kingdom, and I went to bed. Sometimes I ordered food, sometimes I pre-cooked food, sometimes I made some pasta at 3 a.m. in the night after I was done playing this game for 14 hours, and I just wanted to tell you how much I love this game playing it for the first time. I mean, I still love this game incredibly, like an incredible amount. And this is going to be a rant, there's going to be lots of negative things. Specifically, I should be streaming right now, by the way. The reason I'm doing this video right now is because I'm kind of burnt out a little bit of speedruns for this game right now, and I wanted to make this video. So you'll see that this is not going to be like a glazing Tears of the Kingdom video, don't get me wrong. But I wanted to just give you the feeling of what it felt like to me to play this game. Man, like going back to the Great Plateau, a place that I've been at for like thousands of hours because of Breath of the Wild speedruns, stumbling into the Colosseum over there, finding something new. Like, I could go on for 30 minutes. The feeling of being overwhelmed in a good way is, to me, what made Tears of the Kingdom so incredibly addicting and special when playing it for the first time. Now, let's talk about abilities. The second thing that, in my opinion, made this game so incredibly fun, playing it for the first time. Let's start with Ultra Hand. Ultra Hand is the ability that casually you usually get first because it's right next to the Temple of Time where you meet Rauru. And you start using it for picking up some objects, building bridges, sticking things together. Things that later on the Great Sky Island teaches you to do a little bit more. You need to build some bridges, you need to build a raft. And this is the first time where you learn that you can use Ultra Hand to build vehicles and basically build ways to get around in Hyrule. And I already think it's pretty cool. It's a cool ability. Next up, you get Fuse. I will talk more about what makes these abilities special later on. Especially the Breath of the Wild player, Ultra Hand like compared to Magnesis is obviously just like a straight up upgrade. That's actually another point that I want to make. When playing this game casually, for the most part, it literally just felt like a better Breath of the Wild in almost every way. I will explain later in which ways I don't think it is a better Breath of the Wild, but for the most part it was so obvious how this was like the final Breath of the Wild version in many ways. Ultra Hand literally makes fun of Magnesis almost. Like, how is Magnesis an ability now after you know what Ultra Hand can do? other than some small niche uses like using Magnesis to bonk enemies on the head. I think they kind of just nerfed that intentionally in Tears of the Kingdom to not allow players these powerful combinations. You get Fuse next. And Fuse is amazing. I want to give you my 2 cents on Fuse and weapon durability. Something that I hear people say all the time that I personally disagree with is that they say weapon durability in Tears of the Kingdom got even worse. And what they mean is, I actually don't exactly know what they mean. Maybe weapons are more brittle. That's because maybe people use the base weapons and they break faster, not knowing that when you fuse objects to these weapons, you actually increase the durability. To me personally, and maybe that's because I played a lot of Breath of the Wild, I know how to efficiently use my resources more. I am personally very aware of how broken bow and arrows are. I am shocked to report that I think they heavily buffed the most powerful weapon in Breath of the Wild, bow and arrows, even more in this game, by essentially giving you infinite stamina. Not infinite, but giving you all the time in the world to, you know, aim while in bullet time, which not only slows down the world around you, but also allows you to aim easily by being able to have very powerful fusions. Okay, to be fair, I used glitches on this file because this is actually a speedrun file, so I can make infinite topaz, which are obviously broken. The game shouldn't be designed around that. That's obvious. But I guess maybe for a normal casual player, durability was more of an issue, but for me, it was the exact opposite. I couldn't catch up having enough weapon slots around to carry all of my weapons with me. I felt like I was constantly with a full inventory of like 70 to 130 damage weapons. And every time I would find a new weapon on the ground, I would be like, oh, I don't have space for that. It would be nice to have, but I don't need it right now. My inventory is stacked. So when it comes to weapon durability, Fuse, I thought was very cool. Some of the weapons might look a bit goofy, like the Ancient Blade Spear. By the way, this Ancient Blade does break after a single hit, even though it actually looks kind of cool. It actually doesn't look that goofy, now that I look at it. But there's some goofy looking weapons. I had a lot of fun experimenting with them, and it felt really cool to get some really cool looking weapons. Some of my favorites are, for example, the Silver Lizalfos Horn, allowing you to run around with scythes in the game, even though, unfortunately, I wish the scythe in this game had a scythe moveset and not just a normal spear moveset. You can't win them all. Fuse, to me, casually, was great. It ends up being one of the most powerful runes, or abilities, sorry, in speedruns, because it allows you to fly around on rockets, like you've probably seen me do earlier. I like Fuse a lot. Oh, I haven't even talked about this. Fuse on shields is honestly the better addition in my opinion. Fuse on arrows, pretty cool. Giving your arrows different effects, like more range, one-shot capabilities, bomb arrows by using fusion. But Fuse on shields is, in my opinion, where the rune, the ability was the most impressive, allowing you to do things like rocket shield jumps, where you can do very long shield jumps that you can use for forward momentum, allowing you to do things like bomb shield jumps, reminiscent of the wind bomb in Breath of the Wild. Obviously not quite the same, but they essentially brought a cool movement feature like this into the game without even using any glitches. It doesn't even end there. You can freeze meat to get a very, like, slippery shield. You can get a sled shield. You can get a spring shield. You can get a shield with a choo-choo jelly to make parrying have elemental effects. Fusion, in my opinion, was genius. And I think when Aonuma first showed off the rune, it broke many people's minds. I had a lot of fun experimenting around with Fuse. I think it's an amazing ability. Next, let's talk about Ascent. Ascent is kind of your get out of jail free card, and I am to this day shocked that the ability is in the game. There's actually so many, like, they tried really hard to make Ascent not break the game, but there is so many little areas in the game where you can actually, and let me actually head there in a second. I will show you one good example of where Fuse can be incredibly ridiculous. But for the most part, they tried pretty hard to make Ascent not break the game. It still breaks the game in many areas. It's super nice to use when you get stuck in a cave somewhere. You want to leave the cave quickly. I think there's some very cleverly designed puzzles around it. But what's actually really funny is that when it comes to really broken glitches, and let me show you an example. In a second, actually will fit better when I talk about auto build. But it's actually not the most broken rune by, like, not even close. There's a ability, I will probably keep saying rune, that's much more broken in Ascent, even though people thought at first, oh, this has to break the game. It does, but it doesn't break the game as much as Fuse or, yes, Auto Build. We'll talk about that in a second. Ascent, amazing casually, loved it. Now let's talk about Recall. Recall is a ridiculous feat. That this rune works as well as it does is wild. You unintentionally drop a part or anything that you want to use Ultra Hand on from a Sky Island, it falls all the way down. You can still use Recall on it when you can only see a pixel of it. The way it accurately tracks the momentum objects have moved at, and the exact path is so cool. Unfortunately, other than a specific launch that I probably won't be able to show you here first try, called the Recall launch, it doesn't have that many uses yet in speedruns. Let me see if I can maybe pull it off. Normally what you want to do is you want to throw a weapon, then recall the weapon, and yeah, I missed it here. You would throw the weapon, recall it, stick it to the spear, and then recall it again. The recall would have remembered the momentum that the spear gets when you throw it, which makes it twist very quickly, and you can use that to then flick Link around. This is called a recall launch, and maybe you've seen it in a previous video. I haven't really practiced it recently because it's not super useful anymore. But recall is super convenient. Actually, I've heard a lot of people call recall the get out of jail for free card for the reason I said earlier, and this is what a lot of people use it for. You drop something unintentionally, recall it back up. Let it be an item or a vehicle. Now, before we talk about auto build, I'm briefly gonna mention, yes, the map rune is useless. Yes, the camera rune exists. It's a camera. And yes, the amiibo rune. These were probably added to fill the wheel. I would have honestly... okay, I guess they made 4 abilities, but it would have almost been better if Ultra Hand had like a button that allows you to open up your auto build history, and then you only make 4. I think that's personally an addition that I would have made, because sometimes, because this wheel and Nintendo controllers, especially Joy-Cons, tend to have stick drift sometimes, it can be easy to misselect one of these abilities, especially if you're trying to go fast or sometimes in the heat of battle. So honestly, we literally didn't need a map rune. There's a button in the game already that opens the map. Amiibo rune could have been accessible from the menu. Auto build could have been an option within Ultra Hand, and the camera could have maybe also been a button or something like that. I feel like they, especially Amiibo and map, feel very filler on this wheel, but this is a well-known fact at this point. Now, before we talk about auto build, because it's kind of a special case, where these abilities truly made me fall in love with them is the ability to combine them. You take a plank with Ultra Hand, you lift it up into the sky, you recall the plank, and then you ascend through the plank that is lifted up with recall, which was initially lifted up with Ultra Hand. This is a 3 ability combo, and I'm sure that some of you have done something like this, if you've beaten the game or played the game in a shrine and were able to solve the shrine because of this successfully, and you felt incredibly smart. This is where, in my opinion, the abilities of this game really shine. The way they seamlessly interact with each other. Fuse maybe not so much, but Fuse in its... I mean, even Fuse, like, I could have maybe used a bomb shield jump instead of ascent to jump onto that platform for whatever reason. What I'm saying is they work so well together. I was asked multiple times in my playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom what my favorite ability is. People ask me, Limcube, what's your favorite ability so far when it comes to this game? And I couldn't answer it because I thought the abilities work so well together that I couldn't have a definitive answer. Let's talk about auto build. Auto build is the most broken rune in the game when it comes to speedruns. I was very lucky and I found auto build in my first day of playing the game. I know that this is definitely not the case for a lot of people playing. Some people will not find it until very late into the game, so it's a very convenient rune, obviously. You can pay Zonite to build your favorite contraptions. You see here some very weird looking ones because of speedruns. But when you have your favorite car, plane, or vehicle to get around, the classic one is the hover bike using the 2 fans and the steering stick. it becomes a very convenient rune. But I want to talk about it briefly already, what makes it so good in speedruns. You can, at least in older versions of the game, do something called an auto build cancel, where anything that you have in your auto build history can basically be summoned next to you. So I'm using auto build here on this Korok, and I perform the auto build cancel. Now auto build is open while I have full control of the game, which for example allows me to carry this Korok next to me seamlessly right now. It will always stay behind me. This, for example, could be combined with the glitch you've seen me do earlier, the pocket rocket, so that I could carry this Korok around with me while I fly, right? Like you see already, for example, for 100% speedruns, how powerful this would be to do these escort Koroks. So this is use number 1 of what makes auto build broken. I will show you use number 2 in a second. Let's make sure that these friends meet each other here. Good example of what makes auto build broken. Number 2, I will show you now as I head towards the Thunderhead Isle, because I want to talk about soundtrack next, which in my opinion was another. Right now, again, I just to recap, because I'm just ranting, I'm just talking and talking and talking, and you might be, where is this going? This is not going anywhere. Right now, I'm just basically summarizing what I like about the game before we talk about the things that bother me, the things that I thought could have been better. And one thing that I want to talk about when it comes to things that I really like is the soundtrack. And one soundtrack that I really did like is at Dragonhead Isle. So that's where we're going to be heading while using the other broken use of auto build. Now, it's technically not another way. It's the same mechanic, but used completely differently. And in speedruns, you'll see it most used by placing down 3 wings on the ground, then performing the same glitch with a very weird looking contraption that I already have pre-saved in this file because of speedruns. And then taking the 3rd wing on top of your wing machine, pushing these wings close to you, and riding your own auto build. And as you can see, this allows you to traverse the game world incredibly quickly. It's actually our number 1 most used glitch in speedruns to travel far distances. Again, keep in mind that this is not available on the most recent version of the game anymore. Much later in the speedrunning section of this video, I'm going to talk about version differences and what makes them so annoying. But this right here is an auto build cancel slide, or ABCS. Another reason that auto build is very powerful. Now let's head down to this island, which is where I'm going to be able to talk about soundtrack, because it's one of my favorite soundtracks in the whole game here on the Dragonhead Isle. And then additionally, I will talk about other soundtrack that I really like and where I think they did a much better job with soundtrack in the game. Now, I think Breath of the Wild's number 1 criticism when it comes to soundtrack was that people said it's not grand enough. Right? People say the soundtrack doesn't sound as grandiose as it did in the past. Think about games like Twilight Princess, the field theme. You have more calm sounding tracks. I think Dragonhead Isle is an example of this. It's just a track that I personally love, which in my opinion did a great job of kind of like capturing the mystery of this place. When you head here for the first time, man, what an amazing section. Especially for me, because I had loved kind of like researching the Zonai ruins with Tears of the Kingdom in mind, and actually going back here, going down this river, and ending up in this place, which is... But if you've seen this video that I made in the past, where I gave people the tip to not go here in the state where this island is right now, that's exactly why. I personally was so happy to see them reuse the Zonai ruins for something actually meaningful, to uncover the secrets here of Dragonhead Isle, that I would have been very sad if I had missed that part. And I know that it was technically missable if you just find this place, but some people seem to really enjoy the feeling of stumbling on this place here unintentionally. So I guess at the end of the day, it's to each their own. But to me, this section of the game was amazing, and the soundtrack was a huge part of it. But I think this game also has tremendously powerful music that's it's very grandiose. I will show you another section that really stuck with me, but I want to use this opportunity real quick, and I'm probably gonna mess this up because I'm recording. Let me actually save the game. Yeah, I want to show you one use of where Ascent is really broken that you might not see a lot when watching people play this game normally. All right, maybe we got it. You could see me use a wing here underneath the island, and this is exactly it. Look where I ascended right now. This is how in speedruns you are able to get to Minoru's mask without getting 10 hearts. It's a simple ascent. They really tried hard to make these ascents impossible, but it was obvious that they weren't going to be able to do it everywhere. So this is actually a really cool cheese strat. You just fly under here and you are able to grab Minoru's mask right away. As you can see, I actually have the Sage of Spirit on this file here. I just don't have 10 hearts because that's what we do how we do it in runs. I just wanted to show you this little feature of Ascent, but let me move on to a section where my last speedrun died, which is why we probably have to travel there first, which I'm gonna do while talking about other tracks that I like before I talk about my final favorite musical section of the game. Okay? Let's get into it. Tracks I love in this game. Let's start. Mifa's Court. One of my favorite locations in the game. I almost cried when I entered that area. The Gleeok battle theme, an absolute feat to behold. Love that track. Weirdly enough, the Magtorok boss fight theme, especially phase 2, is something that I feel like a lot of people sleep on. Sidon's theme, what an absolute banger. Construct Factory, once you've actually finished this. Actually, unfortunately I already activated the tower. When you first activate a tower, because I think if you press A right now, it just does... Yeah, unfortunately. We might actually have to get another tower on the way. Yeah, let me get another tower on the way so I can show you my single favorite track in the game, which in my opinion is a pretty underused one. But while we ride there, I will give you some more examples. I need to think about them myself. Queen Gift, I mean, all of the boss fight themes are incredible. Demon Dragon, my lord. The final theme of Demon Dragon, the final phase, is such an incredible track. Every time we do speedruns, and I want to talk about Demon Dragon in a second. The last theme always gets to me. It's so incredibly special. I'm sure I'm forgetting a ton of tracks. Let me think about it. I'd say Moragia, the Moragia boss theme up on Death Mountain. Very different than your average track. The Sky Labyrinths. I just need to look around and I immediately can think of so many amazing music pieces in this game that really stand out. Like I could keep going. The Shrine Battle theme, such an incredible track. Let me look around a little bit more. Let me know what you really liked. Maybe there's a track that stands out. I will probably talk about it in a second here because I know what people's favorite is for the most part, and that's, if I'm already looking up there, gonna be part of what I'm about to really talk about when it comes to soundtrack. Also, I'm messing up here. Which is gonna be the boss in that area I'm looking at right now. If you're only listening to the video right now, I'm looking at the Hebra region and the snowstorm there. I mean, I love the Lookout Landing theme, and especially, and this is something that maybe a lot of people don't know, when you get back to Lookout Landing after having completed all of the 4 major areas, when Hyrule Castle, the little Hyrule Castle section, where you end up fighting the Phantom Ganons. There's a different version of Lookout Landing that plays during that part. I love that one too. I love all of the... I guess it's kind of reminiscent of the minor versions of the village themes. You know how all of the village themes in this game have like a minor version? Rito Village over there, which is where we're going to be heading soon. Yep, spoiler, I will talk about my favorite musical section. That one in particular... no, not that one in particular. All of the village's minor themes, where it's like in a minor key, are incredible. I'm actually sad sometimes that they revert to the original version. In some cases, I prefer the version that it was before. Now, let me talk about my favorites for a little bit as I gush more. It's this one. When you first activate the Skyview Tower, it's amazing. That little harp run that plays as you're about to get launched into the sky, with the amazing saxophone parts that plays later on. Oh god, we need to talk about another musical section, but listen to this one for a second, take it all in. That like little harp run there gets you all excited what you're about to see. And then man, like every time they do these transitions from the ground into the sky, especially at daytime and it's like cloudy on the ground but sunny in the sky. And then this, it still gets to me now after having seen it so much. God, this is gonna be a 5-hour video, I'm starting to think, but that's fine. I have a lot to say, and I want to just get it all out at one point. So towers, Skyview Tower activated. I mean, I love the tower theme in Breath of the Wild, but I think this one takes the cake. Probably my favorite single piece of music. It encapsulates the feeling of the game really well, from like the harp run, the getting excited, to this serene feeling of the Sky Islands. It's a lovely piece. And here, this is... the towers also encapsulate what I talked about earlier so much. You just want to get a tower. Let me just get this tower real quick as I'm going to Rito Village. But then the towers shoot you up into the sky, and suddenly you see this weird Sky Island formation. Suddenly you see this geoglyph. Suddenly you see 7 shrines you haven't seen. That's what this game is so amazing at. It just overwhelms you in the best way possible. And this will... I will, trust me, I will have a lot to say when we talk about negative aspects of the game too. I keep saying this is not just a glazing Tears of the Kingdom stream. The game will get its fair share of criticism from me as well, but I just want to give it the positive feedback it deserves as well, especially because, yeah, I had such a good time with it. But let me talk about my favorite musical section before we move on to probably the last two things that I want to talk about when it comes to positive. There's much more. You already have heard me not say much about story, and unfortunately I won't have too many positive things to say about story. We'll get to that later. But when it comes to gameplay, like, and the feeling that it gives you to explore this unfamiliar world, which is exactly what they were going for, man, they really hit the nail on the head there. But yeah, Rito Village. Rito Village, everything about it was my favorite musical section in the game. I will give a special shout out to another one that I think is extremely severely underrated. I might actually have to pull up YouTube to give it justice. Otherwise, I won't be able to show it to you. But Rito Village. You first come to Rito Village. You see the snowy version of Rito Village, incredibly kind of calming and chilling. No pun intended. I like that theme a lot, that like kind of like still and more silent Rito Village. I like it. I mean, maybe because I'm an introvert, I would probably feel more at home in this Rito Village than the vibrant, colorful Rito Village after we save it from the snowstorm. Something about it just sits right. I'm gonna try to avoid the cutscene with Tulin here because I want to make my way to the section that, to me, will be my favorite section of the game, musically and also gameplay-wise. And I think a lot of people share this, which is going to be the lead up to the Wind Temple. And I say specifically lead up because the Wind Temple, despite being extremely strong musically, my god, the Wind Temple has got a lot of good music. I haven't even talked about the fact that all of the temples have amazing music, especially because, especially what they did with the different stages. You know what I mean? Like how the different phases of the temples in this game have different transforming music. Like, my god, they made that. That was a good choice. And the ones in the Wind Temple are really strong. But the lead up to the Wind Temple from Rito Village to eventually reaching the sky area around there, which is where we're going to be heading next, was incredible. The gameplay, the music hard carried it. The skydiving music of actually going into the Wind Temple too. And this is what I kind of talked around it the entire time. This is probably most people's favorite track. The boss fight, Colgera. What an amazingly grandiose track. I think this is what a lot of people wanted. Great. I mean, the bosses in general, I haven't actually written that down at a specific point. The bosses in general, in my opinion, are a big upgrade in this game. Some of them are a little underwhelming, honestly, in terms of when it comes to actually fighting them. But at least when it comes to spectacle and music, they all delivered. And Colgera, I think, was the perfect one to really get a lot of people's hopes up, I guess, for the rest of the game, but also give a lot of people what they wanted. Like I said, like more grandiose, kind of like spectacle boss, and the soundtrack is just amazing for Colgera. Let me just go to the Rising Island chain just because of... Man, I feel like if there was one moment that I would like to re-experience in Tears of the Kingdom, it would be exactly that. Heading up to the Rising Island chain for the first time, having the music slowly like change from mysterious to determined to again grandiose when you actually enter the Wind Temple, to then again kind of mysterious to more grandiose and culminating in that amazing Colgera boss fight. Like, that section deserves a Grammy. I can briefly touch on the fact that later, well, we can briefly talk about Game of the Year, but if Tears of the Kingdom doesn't win Game of the Year, to me personally, when it comes to soundtrack, it has definitely, it definitely has a claim to not only be nominated, but have a pretty good shot at winning. And I think this section in particular is a big reason that is the case. Once again, I'm trying to kind of encapsulate the atmosphere of entering this place for the first time. It's this cold, mysterious sound playing right now as you're kind of unsure where you're going to be heading to next, as you see these flying boats flying around the Wind Temple. As you climb up, right? That's what makes it so powerful, because the gameplay here is obviously a constant climb. You reach the first shrine and you reach the sections with the boats. You're still not exactly sure where you're going. All you know, and this is especially strong for me, because for me, I did the Wind Temple first. I think that actually is a good idea, and the game heavily steers you to that part. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But I think what made it special to me is because I wasn't sure where I was heading. I didn't know what temples were yet. I had no idea, really. And you can already hear the music is transforming a little bit. And that's what makes, in my opinion, that feeling of the climb feel more satisfying, because you're getting somewhere. Not only literally, like not only are you literally climbing up, but the music is kind of reinforcing this by slowly transforming. Obviously, actually, I am a absolute hater about what you just saw. The fact that the music changes... Oops, I forgot that that's a thing. Back to the battle theme. When... sorry, I'm trying to not fall. The fact that the music changes back to the battle theme when you encounter a battle here, in my opinion, is an absolute disaster. I wish it wasn't that way. Like, we know the battle theme. The battle theme can play every time you're just like exploring the overworld. But did it really? And the transformation keeps on happening, right? We get some strings in here now. Starting to get some sounds of determination. By the way, I might just be waffling right now. But this is literally just me trying to put my feelings into words when it comes to this section. Some of you might completely disagree with me and think I'm like high or something with what I'm saying here. But this is what it felt like to me, and the big reward hasn't even happened yet. I'll tell you what I mean with the big reward in a second as I make my way up there, kind of trying to re-encapsulate the feeling of going through this area for the first time. But yeah, this is really what it felt like to me. Oh, another thing, another positive that I'm gonna touch on, and I guess I will touch on this later, because it's kind of like an upside and a downside at the same time, is the way that shrines were used in this game. I think some people, rightfully so, had an issue with the shrines in this game and said they were worse than the ones in Breath of the Wild. I thought they were used in a pretty cool way. It's actually not this shrine, but the shrine below that basically teaches you how to use these flying boats in the first place. This one ends up being just a blessing, which another positive that I want to mention is how beautiful the blessing shrines are in this game. It doesn't really matter in the long run because it doesn't add anything to the gameplay. But I thought the blessing prints are really pretty. But the way they use the shrines to kind of teach you gameplay mechanics, not just things like how to throw a weapon, but for example, as like how to use the boats, right? I thought was a really cool idea. I remember being completely mind blown when I found the shrine below here that literally has it's huge and has these flying boats inside and to kind of teach you how they work. But this is what I mean. The music definitely transforms once again, and now we're really becoming determined. And this is a lot of fan service as well for Breath of the Wild fans, as they start to throw in some hints for things like the attack on Var Meadow, for things like the Rito Village theme, for things like previous iterations of Rito themes from Zelda themes. There's some Wind Waker references in here. And okay, this is turning into like a music theory, but do you hear that piano? That bass just goes dun, 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 dun. I mean, that literally, to me at least, signifies the feeling of climbing up and going higher and higher. And that's what you do. You go higher and higher as you climb from boat to boat. And I think in a second here there's gonna be a harmonica. I'm sorry, it's an accordion that joins. There it is. Playing the Attack on Var Meadow theme in the background, faintly. As you eventually reach the top of the section. And this is where I was like, man, I can't believe this game is real. Because you reach the Eye of the Storm. And suddenly everything gets quiet. Piano stops. You see the ship circling the Eye of the Storm. You still don't know what's coming next. Until you see what's coming next. And the game plays this. Yeah, they did that pretty well. I think. And this, in my opinion, was the best music section of the game. And in general, I tried to kind of encapsulate one more time of what it felt like to play this game, that feeling of mystery and that reward you get when you discover something entirely new. Like the Wind Temple, which I actually won't be able to enter, in case you're curious. If you have never seen this. Because I haven't brought Tulin up here. But yeah, anyway. This is probably gonna be it when it comes to music. I wanted to give a small shout out to a section that's is severely underrated, which is when you first finish the Great Sky Island and you send the Master Sword back in time. Everything about that section, and you know what, because this is already such an unscripted, full-on stream-like rant video, let me pull up the youtube.com on my other screen so I can show you that section, as I'm going to be teleporting back to the Great Sky Island, because we're going to be starting to switch to the negatives and my issues of the game in a second here. But let me play the, where is it? The Great Sky Island cutscene? Cutscenes? Great Sky Island all cutscenes. Okay, let me open up this video because I want to make sure to not blast your ears away. No. But basically everything, I want to quickly just again, just for that you actually hear what I'm talking about. What I thought was really cool, Raru's theme during the Great Sky Island gets teased many times, but it never really gets a full resolution. It's up to you. Until you meet him for the final time. And it actually plays and finishes on those final notes, like this.
Though our time together has been brief, I am so happy that we finally met.
This part here.
You are exactly as Zelda said. I've done everything
Beautiful.
I can for her.
Then it goes on to Link sending the Master Sword back in time, which is so lovely. The way, man, like I'm gonna tear up. It's so well done. The piano starts playing, obviously. The Master Sword is talking to him. Or at least the voice in the sword is making itself known. I should have probably put this on screen somehow, but at the end of the day, again, this is just me kind of like showcasing some of the musical moments that really stood out to me. The way the clock ticks 7 o'clock here every time, even though you can do this cutscene at any time, into the sounds of Recall playing, and then the piano. And Zelda receiving the sword, and then just like the way these saxophone notes like play together with the piano here. It's so beautiful. And then it is obviously all finalized with the light dragon appearing through the clouds. That section, like, man, it's beautiful. We get the Erhu, which, I mean, man, like, I say this every time I go back to this cutscene because of how well it was done musically. How on earth? It's incredible how they pulled it off. If you watch my playthrough of the game, you'll see me dive down here from the Room of Awakening and being like, oh, look, it's our dragon friend. At the time, I was convinced that the dragon flying around this island, the light dragon, was Raru in dragon form. And I was convinced that that was going to be the case. So I guess I completely closed my eyes to the fact of who else that dragon could be. The way they do this cutscene there really makes you think, how did I not know who the light dragon is? Or what the light dragon is? I guess it kind of works both ways, because even in the cutscene after the end of the Great Sky Island, you could be like, oh yeah, this is Raru in dragon form, opening me a way to the surface so I could continue with my mission to find Zelda. But it's still incredible to me in retrospective how it's not super obvious to everyone who the light dragon is, but it really isn't. Like, no one really knows until a certain part in the game. For me, it was personally when I discovered the Sheikah, I think it's a Sheikah, or Pura pet, I think, geoglyph on the ground where they talk about draconification for the first time. This is where I first started having doubts about that dragon's identity. Which, let me just get it out of the way. Again, this is a rant, so it wouldn't be a rant without me talking about this specific feature. People, to this day still, and I want to hear some of your thoughts about this, people still call Raru a goat man. And I get it, because he has goat features. He looks like a goat. But, all dragons do. In fact, in creating a champion, they say that the dragons in this game, like Nadra, Farosh, and Dinral, were created after the likeliness of things like dogs with long faces and goats. But he also clearly has like scales on his body. He clearly has the same eyes than the dragons do. I want to talk about the connection between Zonai and dragons and what I wished we would have gotten more of later on. But now that I'm basically done talking about the game's positives for a full hour, I do actually want to add one last thing. I want to start talking about issues of the game soon, but we haven't filled that last hour yet. So I want to talk about some more powerful moments that stand out to me, that really got me when playing for the first time. Obviously, diving into the depths for the first time. Obviously, encountering the demon dragon left me speechless. Realizing that the mazes are 3 layers instead of the previously only thought 2 layers. Even though the fact that the layer underground ends up just being a boss fight. But just the concept of that was amazing. Lightcast Island in particular was an area that really, really stunned me. I thought it was actually the best Sky Island in the game. The game had so many powerful moments that will stick with me for a long time. Oh, another one. I think it's that Sky Island over there, perhaps. It's actually crazy that the render distance works this way. I think this one has a switch, and then you start like shield surfing down to the ground to unlock a shrine. Really stuck with me, that one in particular. Like I said, that Wind Temple section probably takes the cake when it comes to main story events. And the section of going through the Zonai ruins, finally being taken back to that place that I love to explore in Breath of the Wild, to then going through the entire Thunderhead Isle, Dragonhead Isle, back underground into the Construct Factory, which seemed so incredibly cool and mysterious, to then, unfortunately, the Spirit Temple, which was maybe a little bit of a letdown after that amazing lead up. And this is going to be a perfect getaway into my issues with Tears of the Kingdom. And what I want to start with is the game's story. I have written down a couple notes that I want to talk about and what bothered me about this game's story. And I won't have too many good things to say. I will when it's time. But let me talk about Tears of the Kingdom story, and this is where we're going to start talking about issues that I have with the game. Let me find my first point here. Okay. Before we start talking about story, there is this point that people say Zelda games are not about story. Zelda games have never been about story, they are about gameplay. Don't complain about the story. And this actually, for me, hits a nerve that I absolutely despise. I think I always get triggered when Pokemon fans do this. And Pokemon fans don't do this usually when it comes to story. But they say, I'm having fun, the game is great, Pokemon is fine how it is. This is the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are the best Pokemon game ever. You are completely entitled to that opinion. I'm super glad that you're having fun. But I think, for example, Pokemon games have issues that could be addressed and that could be improved upon. I understand that Zelda games are not about story. Even though I think to some extent they are. And I think in this game they were making the point that the story was going to be more interesting and like more meaningful and maybe a little bit more grandiose. I keep saying that word for the lack of a better word. I don't think any of these people would have an issue if the story was more well thought out, if the world building was a little bit more meaningful, and if things that you do in game felt like they had a little bit more of an impact when it comes to the prequel as well, to Breath of the Wild. Things would be more coherent and it would be more thought out, better thought out. I will talk about specific points in a bit. I don't think anyone would have an issue with that. Like, sure, okay, let's say Zelda games are not about story. Let's say they're just about gameplay. Why not push for a better story then? Is that necessarily bad? I mean, I don't know if these people are by saying that the game is not about story, admitting that the story has issues and just say, well, it doesn't even matter anyway, which is fine. Like, okay, if it's not about story for you, that's cool. I know a lot of people care about the story. There's millions of people watching Zelda lore videos. I think games with great world building and interesting storylines tend to do really well. And I think Zelda has such an interesting premise for a cool story to be told. And I think in many ways they tried. Like, this game, while it is very gameplay focused, they went in for some pretty complicated story plots, especially time travel, right? Which a lot of people said was gonna be an issue, because writing good time travel is hard. And I will immediately use that to kick off my first issue with Tears of the Kingdom stories. Keep in mind that you are free to commentate under this video and maybe explain something to me that I maybe have misunderstood from my personal time of sitting down with the game and trying to understand things. And number one, I want to get straight into it because I just talked about time travel, is the issue that I have with Tears of the Kingdom is that it's very, very, very vague about what version of time travel it is using. Now, it clearly is using time travel. A lot of people at first were talking that they don't think they're gonna do time travel. It always leads into issues, and maybe that's exactly what they were talking about. Now, as you start playing the game and you head down to Hyrule Castle, you come across the mural. This intricate mural. Actually, I should have pictures of it here on the Pura Pad, because Zelda takes them, right? This mural right here. And you can actually see it on the right side. There is rocks covering a mural on the right. Later, when you go down to Hyrule Castle to challenge the final boss, you can break these rocks, and you can see that the mural has always depicted the story of Zelda going back in time and turning into the light dragon. So the mural makes it seem like it's a closed kind of time loop. Things have always happened this way. This means that during Breath of the Wild, these sky islands were basically behind a cloud barrier. There was a light dragon in the sky with the Master Sword. There were basically two Master Swords at the same time. Zelda was always doomed to fall back in time. Yada, yada, yada. Now, the interesting part is that these murals are blocked by rock. And it doesn't necessarily already destroy option number 2. So option number 1 is things have always happened this way. It's a closed time loop. Option number 2 is the second Zelda falls back in time, she is essentially creating an alternate timeline. She changes the timeline we used to be in because she finds the secret stone and events unfold differently. Now, why is this even a possibility? It explains a lot of issues that I have in the game when it comes to changes. The geoglyphs are a good example. The geoglyphs in this game are explained by they were always there. Some ancient Hyruleans have found the dragon's tears and drew the glyphs around them. They then disappeared and eventually just randomly showed up again because of the upheaval. That's a sentence that they use many times. They say things in Hyrule have changed because of the upheaval. That's a good example. Another example are the shrines. The shrines on the surface, there's a newspaper article, they say they have mysteriously appeared. They were not there before. Another huge, and I want to have my entire point about this, point that would kind of like support the timeline, the new timeline theory, is the disappearance of the Sheikah tech. Some people don't seem to remember Link as the hero who defeated the Calamity. There is a school lesson in Hateno that talks about the previous Calamity and how a hero showed up, and Link is literally in the lesson, but no one mentions the fact that probably around 5 years ago, Link has just saved the world. He's just this random Hateno dude, and the kids in school know him as Link, but they don't really know him as the hero. Some people, though, seem to remember Link as the hero. We'll talk about the discrepancies between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom more later, but all of these theories would be more easily explained by saying, yo, Zelda fell back in time and has now created a new timeline because of these events. Because she fell back in time, things are now different in Hyrule. Now, that also doesn't work. Both options have their issues. Option number 1's issue is all of the consistencies I just talked about. I still think they go for option number 1, where they say it's a closed loop, things have always happened this way, right? But option number 2 definitely doesn't work, because when you actually reach Ganondorf in the intro section of the game, he knows your names. And the only reason Ganondorf could know your names is if Zelda had already fallen back in time and had already changed. Again, if my understanding here is wrong, please comment and educate me, because I would love to understand. But that to me means that Zelda has always fallen back in time. This has always happened. She is responsible for the events that have unfolded. Rauru already having sealed Ganon. And oh man, there's so many other points that we have to talk about. And Ganon already knowing Link's and Zelda's name. Things that make it more complicated are a line that Rauru says. There is a line that Rauru says in one of the memories at the geoglyphs, where he basically says, Zelda, don't forget, you are from a future in which you never appeared in this time. This is after Zonya passes away. Rauru talks to Zelda in the Temple of Time, and Zelda's like, Rauru, I know what's gonna happen. You're gonna lose. You're gonna lose. You're gonna end up sealing Ganondorf. This is the result. And Rauru's like, well, I have to try it anyway. And remember, and maybe he says this, like, again, this is just me explaining the weird inconsistencies that happen in this game. Maybe he says this to calm Zelda down. Maybe he lies to her. Maybe Rauru knows that this is inevitably gonna happen, because that's how time travel works, and he says this is a future in which you never appeared here, to give her hope that maybe things will go differently this time. If that's the case, that's me explaining it for the developers, though. It's kind of weird that he says this line. Like, you would think that Rauru understands how time travel works, and maybe he does, and maybe he says it to calm down Zelda, But if it's me explaining that to you, instead of the developers kind of like supporting this theory, that's a little bit sad. And a lot of times, us as a community, we can carry this game slow, we can explain things, but it's just unfortunate that I feel like Nintendo has passed up the opportunity to kind of give us some confirmation within the game to make these thoughts more, like, to make these thoughts feel more worth it, to make yourself feel better about figuring something out in the game instead of just guessing. Also, man, this game is beautiful. Like, I'm sorry, but it's definitely, this game and Breath of the Wild are still the most beautiful looking games on the Switch. Like, just look at this. How even is this on the Switch? While I'm kind of like trashing on some things in the game, I constantly have to stop and be like, this is almost like a toxic relationship. Maybe I have an issue here. But like, man, it's so pretty. Let me actually disable. No, I disabled something that I shouldn't have disabled. This thing. I want to go to pro mode because I don't need the minimap anymore because there's no wind bombs. Haha. But yeah. So which version of time travel are we dealing with here? Has any of you figured it out? I wasn't able to figure it out and it's driving me nuts. There's other problems with this, such as Zelda existing. Because we know that Rauru and Zonya were together, and Zonya notices a blood connection between Zelda and Rauru, but we never see their child. And I know this is something that you've probably heard 16 times by now, but how do developers explain this? Did they just say, okay, they had a child and it just like never showed up in the game? They were hiding it and that child eventually goes on to create Zelda's bloodline? Kinda weird. If you know what time travel it is, let me know. Now, the second issue we're gonna go in right now is, where do the Zonai come from? What we know from the original mural is that the Zonai descended from the heavens, right? It is said that the Zonai descended from the heavens with these godly gifts, the secret stones, and the Zonai were... We don't exactly know how many Zonai there were in the first place. As far as I know, we know of Rauru, we know of Minoru. Those two, I think, are the only confirmed members of the Zonai race. There should be more. We never really get introduced to them, though, as far as I know. Maybe I'm missing something here. We don't really know where they come from. Are they coming from a physical place? For example, there is some islands up here in the sky, right? But we also don't really know what these islands are. It is explained later that the Great Sky Island, or at least everything that's on the Great Sky Island, like the Temple of Time, used to be on the surface. When Link sends the Master Sword back in time from this position over there, it is then cut to Zelda to around this location. So the Temple of Time used to be around where the Temple of Time is now. So this Great Sky Island, at least by the game's explanation, was sent into the sky. I have other issues with this later on. I will talk about Sky Islands. Actually, I mean, we kind of have to combine this. So they say that the Great Sky Island used to be on the ground. The Temple of Time certainly was on the ground. How this was achieved is also kind of controversial. One of the cutscenes suggests that this power of the sages lifted the island up into the sky, while if you do the quest with all of the flowers in the sky, it is said that Minoru and Zelda made sure to get the islands up into the sky, but the problem is that Zelda certainly wasn't able to do so because she turned into a dragon before the islands were lifted into the sky. Another huge issue is that the Great Plateau has not changed. If you look at the memories, this game's memories, the geoglyphs, you can clearly see the shape of the Great Plateau looks pretty much the same. The mountains are the same, the general structure is the same. There is a castle where now the Shrine of Resurrection is. Yeah, okay. That castle is randomly gone. But the general structure, the general, like, island, sorry, it's not an island yet, but the general ground looks the same. There's rivers mostly in the same areas. It's a little bit different. But again, there is no way, basically, that physically this entire place was sent up into the sky, has completely changed now, other than the Temple of Time. That still looks completely the same. But the area down here also looks the same, but the Great Sky Island looks different because it has deteriorated over time. Maybe the Great Plateau is like magical and just restored to its old appearance, while the version up there completely deteriorated and is not recognizable anymore. There is shrines clearly visible on the ground in these memories, right? These shrines are actually exactly where the chasms now are, on the Great Plateau, and where later the Sheikah shrines would be built. For example, here. There is a chasm here now. There used to be a Sheikah shrine in Breath of the Wild, and there is probably a Zonai shrine in the memories of the past, because we can clearly see that there's a Zonai shrine where the Stasis shrine used to be, and there's a Zonai shrine where the Cryonis shrine used to be, in the past memories. These shrines are now gone. There's holes here now anywhere, there's no Sheikah shrines anymore. So you could be like, oh, so are these shrines from the surface now the shrines in this Great Sky Island? Because the Great Sky Island used to be the Great Plateau. But that also doesn't make sense, because how on earth would the shrines be untouched? They would still look the same, but the area around them would have shifted so drastically. In fact, if we believe that the shrines in the sky, the only explanation that the shrines in the sky exist, if we kind of understand how shrines work in this game, is if all of the Sky Islands used to be on the surface, right? Maybe that's the explanation the game goes for. Maybe all of the Sky Islands used to be on the surface. Because the way that these shrines exist is they are basically buds, right? They're flower buds. Light roots from the depths grow up to the surface, and at the very top of that light root, there is a shrine. That's at least kind of the connection of them. So how do the shrines in the sky exist if they're not connected to light roots? The only explanation is if they were connected to light roots in the past, like maybe thousands of years ago, these Sky Islands were on the ground. And these light roots have sprouted before. I think the explanation of the game is that Rauru made these shrines to... I think... I'm trying to remember the reason that he built the shrines back then. I think it was like sacred power to protect the lands or something. Even though back then, technically... Man, there is so many issues in this game. I'm sorry, but like back then, Gloom didn't even exist, right? Because the Demon King didn't even exist yet. So why did we even need the shrines? But anyway, what I'm trying to say is maybe all of the Skylands were on the ground and the light roots made them and then they were all sent into the sky. Okay, but then where did the Zonai come from? Did they not come from the Sky Islands? Did they come from the heavens above? Maybe. Okay, let's say the Zonai came from the heavens above. All of the Sky Islands used to be on the surface. Then where are the light roots that bore... that in the past gave birth to the shrines in the sky? Did they now sprout again and made new shrines? Why is there only 32 shrines in the sky? Like, I know, I'm nitpicking, but I would love if there was some sort of explanation to that in general. And the Sky Islands, in my opinion, their existence is very controversial. The game basically says they are here because of the upheaval. And the Great Skyland used to be on the surface, but it doesn't really make sense, again, because of how differently it looks up there, and how basically here everything looks the same. It doesn't really make sense. Where did the Zonai come from? From the Sky Islands? Probably not, because the Sky Islands should have only existed after the Zonai have already died. Now, in general, it was said by the developers and actually confirmed that this game is supposed to play after the events of the original Zelda timeline. This is basically not a reboot of the timeline, but it plays after all of the events of the previous timeline. Hyrule is then refounded by Rauru and Zonya. Maybe that's the reason that Ganondorf exists, because, you know, events are basically doomed to repeat themselves, even in this new founded Hyrule. But it still doesn't really explain where the Zonai come from. Even then, there should have already been islands up in the sky, right? Because Skyloft should predate... should predate even the founding of Hyrule and Tears of the Kingdom. Things just get extremely confusing when it comes to the history of the Sky Islands and where the Zonai came from. I briefly also want to explore the Zonai Dragon connection, which is something that I would have absolutely loved to talk about in DLC. I already touched on the fact that, in my opinion, the Zonai, the two that we know, Minoru and Rauru here, have some draconic features. Minoru, not as much. Minoru is basically a cat or bat woman when it comes to her face. But there is a very clear connection of between Zonai and dragons, and I will get into this more. In my opinion, Rauru has the most obvious one. He has a beard that looks pretty scale-like. He has the same eyes, and Minoru also has the same eyes. I mean, not quite, actually, Rauru more so than the dragons in this game. And the most obvious connection is obviously the secret stones that the Zonai bring onto the surface as gifts. Now, we know that consuming one of those secret stones will turn one into a dragon. This begs the question, who are the other 3 dragons in the game? Who is Naydra? Who is Dinral? Who is Farosh? As of right now, we don't know it. What we know is that Minoru knows about draconification. She knows that ingesting a secret stone will turn one into a dragon. The only way she could know this is if it has happened before. So if it has happened before, it is very likely that the other 3 dragons, Dinral, Farosh, and Naydra, were also at one point Zonai. They ingested a secret stone and turned into their form now. The reason that this is unlikely though is because these 3 dragons are often compared to the 3 goddesses. In my opinion, it would also make sense if the Zonai actually are basically descendants of these 3 dragons. The reason the secret stones turn you into dragons is because they are gifts from the dragons bestowed to the Zonai who are descendants from the dragons. This also doesn't make sense though, because the Zonai definitely descended onto the surface. There is no signs of dragons in the past, at least the ones that we know now, because things like the dueling... Actually, I think the dueling peaks in the memories is still one mountain, which is described to have been split into 2 by a dragon. So we don't know if Farosh, Dinral, and Naydra exist in the past yet. Maybe they do, and they just haven't split the mountain yet. The real issue that I have here is basically that we don't know. It's like the chicken and the egg question. We don't know. Where do the Zonai come from? Where do the dragons come from? Are the Zonai descendants from the golden goddesses, because they're said to be descendants from the gods? And is that the reason that secret stones turn you into dragons? Because they're gifts from the dragons? Or do the Zonai come from some other god? Maybe Goddess Hylia herself? And for some other reason, the secret stones just randomly turn you into dragons, and the other 3 dragons, who are referred to as the golden, like the spirits, and by some have the same name that the golden goddesses had in the past, and they just happen to be Zonai. Maybe these 3 randomly were Zonai who wanted to eat a secret stone for fun. We won't know, and unfortunately we will never know. This was, as far as I know, for most people, the #1 requested topic for DLC. I've heard many times that people wanted a DLC for this game to cover exactly that question. As of right now, mid-October recording this video, we know that DLC for this game will not happen. So this is probably going to be a question that will never be answered. Another issue that I have with the story. Another connection. And this has been a heavily discussed topic very recently, is the connection between Zonai and Sheikah. Now, if you look at Rauru's design, there's another very interesting... Actually, Minoru's design as well. There's another very interesting point, which is the 3rd eye on their forehead that is closed most of the time. In Rauru's case in particular, you can actually see a teardrop on his nose and a closed 3rd eye on his forehead, which resembles, and you can see it briefly as I open the Sheikah slate, the Pura pet, perfectly the Sheikah icon. You can basically see that 3rd eye on the screen and that teardrop right below. So it seems like that the Sheikah symbol is heavily inspired by Rauru's appearance, by the Zonai. Another very clear connection, and we talked about this before, is that the Sheikah shrines in Breath of the Wild, at least on the Great Plateau, were built exactly where there was Zonai shrines in the past. In the past, we can see, when Breath of the Wild, there used to be Stasis and Cryonis. There is Zonai shrines right there. The green shrines of this world, they are right there. So for some reason, the Sheikah later on went to these locations to build their own sanctuaries there, or at least around there, because the Sheikah shrines are technically, at least a lot of them are technically underground and they raise to the surface. But there is some sort of connection there. And it seems very apparent. I actually would recommend you to check out Monster Maze's video about this topic recently, because I felt exactly like he did. I was convinced that there is a very, very strong connection between Zonai and Sheikah. I was convinced that Pura would eventually become our Sage of Spirit. And Minoru is basically that exact tie-in. She seems so much like a Sheikah in terms of personality. She has that craving for wisdom. She's researching things. I mean, she is literally in the Pura pet. Like, the connection is right there, but it doesn't get explained beyond that. How did the Sheikah really get inspired by the Minoru? How is that connection seemingly so obvious without ever being properly explained? And it goes beyond that, because the problem is, what on earth happened to the Sheikah tech? And I will talk about the fact that Nintendo has actually addressed this topic recently. We see very little Sheikah tech in this game. The number one example is probably the Skyview Towers. People in the past had said, okay, yeah, the Guardians for the most part are clearly missing from this world. We don't see any Guardian enemies anymore. There is actually one Guardian left on the Hateno Tech Lab. Towers are gone, the Divine Beasts are nowhere to be seen. What happened? What happened to all of the Guardians at the Dueling Peaks stable? There used to be hundreds of Guardian corpses around Hyrule. What happened to the Divine Beast? Some people said maybe they used all of it to rebuild these towers. They tore away the Skyview Tower. They tore away the huge pillars around Hyrule Castle, the Divine Beast, and they built the Skyview Towers. I mean, I don't really know if I need to explain why this doesn't make sense. There is way too little Sheikah tech used in these towers to explain the missing pieces, right? Like, okay, you could say, okay, I guess this pipe here used like 4 shrines, and this terminal used 1 shrine, and maybe this platform here is a little bit of Baruta, but it just doesn't fit. It just doesn't match up clearly, right? And then other people said they intentionally destroyed the Sheikah tech so that it wouldn't be taken over by Ganon again, which makes perfect sense, right? Like, why would you want the Divine Beasts to stick around if Ganon can clearly use them against us? Why would you use the Guardians? Good point. But then why on earth destroy the Shrine of Resurrection? The literal facility that saved Hyrule. Without the Shrine of Resurrection, Link wouldn't have been able to be reincarnated, or wouldn't have been able to go in this 100-year slumber to literally go on to save the world. So what does Hyrule do? You know what? Let's destroy it without a trace. That doesn't make sense, right? So that explanation also kind of falls flat. Now, thankfully, there was recently a brave journalist who, in an interview, asked. He just asked. He went to Nintendo and asked them. Recently, a lot of people have come forward and said they think it's weird. They don't know what happened to all of the Sheikah tech. Could you maybe explain us what happened? And in another interview with Famitsu, Nintendo had actually said that they were thinking about all of this. A lot of things in this game were thought through, and the community maybe hasn't discovered them yet. And I was actually very excited. I thought maybe there's a lot of hidden secrets in the game that we don't know yet. But after that recent explanation, I'm starting to think that they truly, really just don't care. And that's okay. The game is amazing anyway, but it was disappointing to say the least. What they said is that the Sheikah tech just mysteriously vanished one day. It just left. The Divine Beasts left. Towers left. Shrines just disappeared. And the reason no one in Hyrule questions it is because they're just used to it. They're just used to mysterious things happen. I feel like there can't really be a bigger middle finger to the community than saying something like that. It just happened. It just disappeared. Deal with it. But by the way, we thought it all through. You just haven't figured it out yet. The explanation is, it just happened. I mean, I don't think I need to explain you how frustrating that is as somebody that really is intrigued by this game's ideas and wants to make it make all wants to figure it out, right? It was a little bit of a kick in the face, and I think a lot of other lore YouTubers, which I don't consider myself a lore YouTuber at all. I'm a speedrunning I'm a Zelda speedrunner. I like making Zelda speedrunning content, but because I did so much speedrunning, I became so invested in this world that I wanted to understand its intricacies. I wanted to understand its mysteries, and it still felt like a kick in the face for me. I think for people that make lore content, it felt like an even bigger kick in the face. Like, why did the Sheikah take... Oh, they said it dipped because it had fulfilled its purpose. But like, there is... And then what is the Sheikah tech in the towers? Is the Sheikah tech sentient? Like, the Sheikah tech that's used in the towers, does it just know to not randomly disappear? Like what is going on? Like, it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, the explanation is trash, and I'm very disappointed by it, and I think a lot of other lore people, when it comes to Zelda games, are as well. It's a little bit of a shame. We just have to deal with it for now. Not for now, probably forever, because we don't get DLC. It is what it is. At the end of the day, and this is another issue that I have with this game, it is just not a very, very faithful sequel to Breath of the Wild. Like, I said it before, there's just things that feel so random. Like, NPCs that you have clearly interacted with not remembering you. Like, a great example is Terrytown. In Terrytown, you meet Bolson. Wait. Hudson. You meet Hudson, and Hudson has met his wife because of you. The game remembers this. The game remembers this. They give you credit for shipping them, basically, right? Because the only reason that Ronson moves into Terrytown is because you do the quest. Now, in order to do the Terrytown quest in Breath of the Wild, there is no way around it. In order to do that quest, you need to buy your house in Hateno. If you don't buy your house in Hateno, you can't do the quest. So then why does Bolson, the guy in Lurlin, who you need to purchase the house from, not remember you? But Hudson does. How is that possible? It doesn't make any sense. How do some NPCs that we know from Breath of the Wild do not age? There's NPCs in... there's this kid like Charmay, I think is the name, at the Woodland Stable, looks exactly the same. There's some Rito look exactly the same, while Turin looks 5 years older. Hudson now has a kid who's about to live on her own, so she isn't distracted by boys. Like, by the time girls started caring about boys, in my experience, they were like 10 or 12. She clearly isn't 10 or 12. Maybe the game wants her to be like 6. Like maybe she's like a 6-year-old girl. She's about to move, to live without her parents in Gerudo Town. Maybe she's like 5, 6. Okay? So 5, 6 years have passed. So how do some NPCs that we know look the same when they were kids, when others have grown up? Why do some people remember Link and others don't? Why is there a school lesson in Hateno that talks about Calamity Ganon and no one remembers Link being the hero? Why do some people know Link? Why is there a statue in Zora's Domain where Link rides on Sidon? Not in the way that a lot of people would want him to ride on Sidon, but like on his back. You know? But no one, but then again, the school lesson doesn't remember Link as the sword fighter, as the hero. Like, there is so many inconsistencies between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that it is obviously, gameplay-wise, it's very much a sequel. It plays in the same world. There is a lot of fan service there, but there is so many random inconsistencies. It almost feels like, and this might literally be the case, maybe they had to hire a lot of people for Tears of the Kingdom, and some people in the team worked on Breath of the Wild and they added these references, and some people didn't, and they didn't. It literally feels like that in some ways. Anyway, that's my big issue. There's one last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to story before I talk about my issues with the game's gameplay, and I also want to touch on speedrun stuff. And that's gonna be the game thinks you're dumb. The game really thinks you're dumb. What do I mean by this? So, I talked about my channel. I want to start with my number one example. The number one example is not going to be the Secret Stones, Demon King, NPC line. It's going to be something else. So if you watched my LimQ Plus channel, again, that's the channel where I uploaded a video every single day until Tears of the Kingdom came out. Towards like later on, probably like around 3 weeks before release, I made a video that was called like Tears of the Kingdom Reality Check. The reason I made that video is because I think people were kind of going crazy and spiraling out of control with their ideas, and me too. Because we were excited, and it's completely normal to do that. We had crazy ideas from maybe you build a rocket ship and you fly to the Blood Moon and you fight Ganon on the moon or whatnot. And I kind of made a reality check where I said, okay, you know what? I reflected recently and kind of tried to be realistic. I personally think the biggest chance still is that Ganondorf is under Hyrule Castle. It clearly looks that way, right? There's gloom coming out of there. This is where the biggest concentration of gloom is clearly happening. And it's leaking from out the entire underground in different areas. We didn't know the depths were like connected back then. But like, let's be real. There's a pretty big chance that the hydrated Ganondorf is basically just back in the past where Zelda is. Back then we didn't know if we could play in the past. We were assuming we couldn't. We wished we could have played in the past, but we were assuming already that we couldn't. As it turns out, you do actually fight the hydrated version of Ganondorf later on in the boss fight, but he is under the castle. And it was pretty much obvious from the start before even playing the game. So when I had finished the Koga questline, where you are supposed to find out Ganondorf's secret location, you fight Koga 4 times, explore the depths for a long time to finally uncover the secret hiding spot for Ganondorf. To get to that point and hear Koga say, I'm gonna reveal the secret. Your mind is gonna be blown. You will never expect where Ganondorf is. To hear him say, he's under the castle. Ain't no way. I was kind of upset that I had expected him to maybe actually pull a 180 on me. Maybe this quest will finally surprise me. After having basically the same story to me explained every single time. Every time you finish a temple, even after you finished 3 temples, the 4th one will still explain you the same story for a 4th time. It will still be like, wow, I wonder why Zelda summoned a giant spider on us. A giant Goma. That's weird. It's not really like her. At this point, and I know everyone talks about this, right? Like, I'm repeating what you've heard other reviewers and people making video essays on this video say, but I do want to give you my thoughts on them. And my thoughts are not very different. Why can Link not talk? Like, why can he not at least, like, wave or, like, do something to tell these helpless sages what's happening? Why, after having already maybe obtained the Master Sword, having figured out exactly what happened to Zelda, having figured out how the time travel is, what the time travel is all about, having figured out that Zelda that's going around Hyrule Castle is fake, why do we still need to let our little sages believe that this Zelda is real? Like, every time you go to a global phenomena area, these sages will be like, oh, what? Why did Zelda do this? Link is just like standing there, not doing anything. And then, like, after you finally do all 4 dungeons, right? After you finally do them, you go back to Lookout Landing, and still, you look through the telescope, and Pura's like, what is Zelda doing there? Like, please. Like, please. Like, I was so upset that the game... I mean, I don't know if the game is trying to appeal to, like, 5-year-olds that still haven't figured it out after getting the confirmation 5 times, or if they just didn't bother to make... And I feel like it would be weird if they didn't bother to make different checks where it's like, if already watched cutscene, play dialogue B instead of dialogue A. That's like, oh yeah, this is a fake Zelda, let's beat her. Instead of being like, oh, why is Zelda summoning a spider? I can't believe it. Like, please, they were putting... There is so many, and I will talk about this later in the speedrun section. There is so many safety checks on the Great Sky Island where they triple check that you have done things in the right order so that you actually understand what's going on. Why not do it in the game's main story that's relevant for every single player? Why take so much care and attention to the game's tutorial? Oh wow, double dragon. And make sure that, wow, this is basically like the logo of the game, if we like go into the right perspective. Why pay so much attention to make players go through the intro in the right order, but then sleep on things like, you already know that Zelda is the light dragon, but you can't tell anyone. And the only people you can tell to is Purah and Impa, and Purah is kind of just like ignoring it, and Impa says she is gonna do something about it, but then never actually does. Like, then there's no reward. It feels sad that the game is basically telling you indirectly that you're stupid. Like, you're screaming at the game at times and being like, Link, please tell them, we know this. But he just doesn't. And you just have to sit through the dialogue anyway, even though you already know. And that's basically my last issue of the game story that I have written down as a point here. I now want to talk about gameplay. And my issue with the gameplay. I already talked about all of the amazing sections of the gameplay, like the game's abilities and some specific sections that I talked about. And what better way than to start with the depths. Now, the depths were obviously an amazing discovery going here for the first time. You dive into this area and you figure out that it's not a cave. It's not 2 caves. It's not 3 caves. It's a third Hyrule. There isn't just Sky Islands. There is also the depths. There is a third area that's all interconnected. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate the depths. I think a lot of people hate the depths. I've heard this take a lot of times where they say the depths is just a tedious chore where you go around and you farm resources like batteries. And you do that, yes, but it still felt incredibly interesting. I liked exploring the depths. I liked figuring out how it's connected to the overworld. I liked figuring out that it's essentially a mirror of the surface. Light roots are under shrines. A grave of 3 soldiers is under a gravestone above. There's walls where there's rivers are. That sort of stuff, right? Going under the Shrine of Resurrection, there's post statues where there's goddess statues. Going to specific locations underground, like here the great mine that's under the Temple of Time, and exploring things like the underground Shrine of Resurrection, I thought was really interesting. My issue was that a lot of the lore of the depths is also not explained at all. This is kind of like a connection between gameplay and lore. Like, the lore of the depths is really interesting. There's clearly constructs down here. There used to be zonai down here. I mean, there's zonai structures here. Where the zonai actually come from the depths? What really are they? Maybe I haven't watched enough lore videos to... Maybe other people have figured out the depths a little bit more, but the lore is kind of weird. Why is there an abandoned Terry mine? Terrytown is a village that we built. It didn't exist before, at least we would think so. Now, some people have recently come out and said there's a goddess statue here in Terrytown where Breath of the Wild, where Breath of the Wild had a Breath of the Wild had a goddess statue here, but no Terrytown, which would maybe make you think that Terrytown existed in the past and it was rebuilt. But that seems kind of weird as well. Especially, I feel like it would have been nice if they maybe added another ruin then, if they were really going for that world building. It just seems like they wanted to be consistent. Every village has a mine. Every shrine has a light root without really making it make sense lore-wise. I talked about the light root shrine issue in the past. But that being said, gameplay-wise, the depths are pretty cool. The problem is that after maybe 10 hours of the depths and finding some cool outfits, it starts becoming pretty tedious. Now, let me talk about the things I don't like about the depths. I don't like that there is boss refights here. Yes, boss refights in general make sense, but why not put like some sort of like... in my opinion, it would have been cooler to have some sort of... I'm looking for the word from Breath of the Wild. Test, not test of strength, it's the Master Sword trial. It's the trial of the sword. Some dedicated place where you encounter them, because having these giant, important-looking bosses just randomly float around in the depths felt weird to me. That's something that bothered me. They seem to be super important, then you find them 3 times in the depths, just chilling here. That doesn't... It adds to the fact later in the story, they just reappear after you beat them. The sages just have to fight them again. Ganondorf just like snips, and these like seemingly important boss fights just respawn. They're also down in the depths. That felt kind of weird. I wouldn't be surprised if the depths were essentially, and this is just what they start feeling like after a couple of hours, if they were basically just done... I don't know, I'm not a game developer, I'm not a world designer, but I think what the depths essentially are, on a base layer, they're probably like Minecraft world edit. They took the surface, they inverted it, retextured it, and then they added stuff. They added stuff like the light roots, they added stuff like the statues, and they added a good amount of stuff. But at the end of the day, eventually it just starts feeling like that. It feels like an emptier Hyrule with some stuff scattered around. It feels cool to explore, but it gets kind of boring. Like, yes, you will find the 20th Yiga structure, which plays the same every time, and you will find Colgera for the 3rd time, but it becomes much less interesting. I think it's still a decent... It's an amazing discovery. It's an amazing discovery. You get some really cool moments down here when you first grasp the scale of the depth. Sometimes you get some cool vistas of the entire area. But it just turns into a grind. It turns into a grind of upgrading stuff. It turns into... It gets boring. It gets boring. That's basically the problem. I think the surface to me didn't get boring. And even the Sky Islands, I think that's mainly because of their visual look, turn kind of boring. I think the Sky Islands don't, sorry, because at least they're pretty, but once you've lit up the depths, it's the same thing. You find the 3rd boss, you find the 20th Giga thing, you eventually upgrade your battery, and then why do you even come down here? Like, yes, maybe to farm some Zonite, to do auto build stuff. Yeah, maybe to find the last Giga schematic. But I mean, okay, so the depths, I'm a kind of 50-50 on the depths. They have good stuff going on for them, but I think they end up, and this is going to be a very controversial take because a lot of people say the Sky Islands were the weakest part of the game, and I think it's close between the depths and the Sky Islands. But to me, the serenity, or like the feeling and the vibe of the Sky Islands, and also the visuals, make them... push them over the depths for me. The depths initially were like a huge cool surprise, but they turned pretty boring. And if I wanted to rate 3 areas of the game, for me it would be number 1, the surface. It never became boring to me. There was just so much to explore. A new cave, a new hidden bubble frog, a new quest. But the depths, yeah, eventually... And I'm gonna say, this is very harsh, but after being amazed, after 15 hours, they felt like surface ChatGPT version. Where it's basically just this generated mirror of the surface. We put stuff here to get your resources, and that's fine. Wait, let me just reiterate. That's fine. That's a really good way to do it, but it's a little bit underwhelming after getting so shocked that this place exists. Especially, in my opinion, when it comes to that lack of lore. Also, why is that spring just wiggling? I see it moving. Maybe that's part of the lore. Okay, obviously, you can't go too crazy, right? You can't expect them to be like... I mean, maybe you should expect them to be like Elden Ring world building level. And Elden Ring and the From Software games also have some things that aren't entirely explained. It's impossible to explain literally everything, but they're really fucking good at it. Like, it's insane how much attention they put into world building and stuff. Like, if From Software made the depths, it would be different. Like this is not me trying to be like putting some Elden Ring elitism, because... like I said, I think my first playthrough of Tears of the Kingdom was like my favorite casual playthrough of anything ever. There's other games that are more... that stuck with me even more because of how well they were thought out. Actually, I'm kind of realizing why this is. I'm currently rating Outer Wilds and Elden Ring over Tears of the Kingdom, even though I had more fun with Tears of the Kingdom in my first casual playthrough, just because that... I think a game is more than your first casual playthrough. You go back to explore connections, you go back to make sense of the world, to really understand the world. And I think the depths fails at that. Because of things like the Terry Mine, because of missed explanations that are not here, that it would explain the connection between the depths and the surface. Let me put you one specific, super hyper specific example. In the cutscene of where Ganon attacks the surface, where he awakens as the Demon King, there's a shot of a shrine, a Zonai shrine that's right here. This is amazing. Because this Zonai shrine in Breath of the Wild is the G-No shrine. There is a Sheikah shrine exactly where the Zonai shrine used to be thousands and thousands of years ago. So the connection is right there. If you go to this place, there's no light route there. All they had to do is put a broken light route down there, and that would have been so cool. Putting that specific attention to put a light route down there where there used to be a Zonai shrine thousands of years ago, even if it's just a broken route, that little detail would have gone such a long way. And this is where the depths, gameplay-wise, let me down. Anyway, let's talk about Sky Islands. I think that's the most obvious connection afterwards. And the number one issue that I have with Sky Islands is that the Great Sky Island, the first Sky Island, is the best one. it's unfortunate. There is some candidates that stand out with Sky Islands. In my opinion, like I said, Lightcast Island is a cool one. That's that big one where you kind of like make the light beam go through the island, and then it like opens this like castle type thing. It kind of looks like the Sky Keep of Skyward Sword. There's the tower, which in my opinion was a little bit of a disappointment. That's my own fault. This tower has appeared in the art book, and I was really interested to see what secrets it would behold. So for it to essentially just be this laser dive challenge, followed by a test of, what is it called? Test of courage? Proving grounds. Was a little bit disappointing. Those stand out. The sky mazes are like kind of fun because of the music. But again, the Great Sky Island is amazing. I absolutely love the visuals on all of the Sky Islands. The music here is lovely. I love being here. This is probably my favorite area in the game to just hang out. Even though I do it so much in speedruns. I thought the Sky Islands were pretty good, but I'm gonna state the obvious here. Number one, the Great Sky Island is the best one. That's underwhelming. Number two, they become too repetitive. They're basically all the same. They're copy-pasted. The skydiving challenge is the same idea 3 times. There's so many crystal shrines that just end up being a blessing, and it just ended up being underwhelming. And I think they were close. Like, the Great Sky Island was nice. They had another good one. All they had to do is to add, like, one other really big one. Maybe at one really high that we had never seen, similar to the depths, where there was like a village there, right? Like that would have went such a long way. That alone would have been enough, I feel like, to persuade a lot of people that think the Skylands are so bad. And let me tell you an idea that I had, which I was very upset. If you watch my casual playthrough, I kind of went through the 5 stages of grief. When you go to Kakariko in this game, there's an NPC there that tells you, we want to investigate the Sky Islands, but we can't. We can't reach them. The only people that have the technology to reach them are the people in Terrytown. The people in Terrytown that have the technology to reach the Sky Islands. When I read that, I was gonna freak out. Because to me, what that read like was, wow, we are gonna do Terrytown again, but we're gonna do it in the sky. This time we're gonna bring people up there and we're gonna build a village in the sky. Cool idea, I think. Let me know if you think it's stupid. I thought it was a cool idea, and I was actually kind of convinced that it was going to happen. Also, yeah, don't mind my old dungeon speedrun, where I don't pick apart containers because they don't do anything, because I've already done the water temple here. Which these areas also are incredibly well designed. Yes, a lot of the Sky Islands in this game end up just being the 2 temples, right? Water temple and wind temple, and they're both beautifully themed. Thematically, I like them a lot. I love the low gravity gameplay as well, especially in the water temple. I like the water temple approach a lot more than the water temple itself, similar to the wind temple, which was more like a letdown. I'm going to talk about dungeons more in a bit, but visually they're cool, but they're kind of like a one-time thing, right? You go here, you do the dungeon, you're done with it. It's not really a place to hang out per se. Actually, I do like how the wind temple looks after you finish it. It feels fun it's very beautiful, in my opinion. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so Sky Islands, I was convinced we were going to build Terrytown in the sky. I'm very upset it didn't happen, and I think overall the Sky Islands are weak. They're very pretty though, and they are part of my favorite memories in the game. Wind temple approach. First time figuring out the mazes are 3 parts. The Great Sky Island is very cool, even though lore-wise it definitely is lacking. The Dragon Head and Thunderhead, I talked about that, in my opinion, is very, very cool. A super, super fun experience. And all things considered, I think the Skylands are cool. I'm very sad we couldn't build a second Terrytown, like I said. There is even like a construction site in Terrytown. This was the reason I thought it was going to happen. Like, what are they constructing? I thought the construction site, because there's like balloons there. Like, let's actually be real. Do you think they were going for that? Like, what are they constructing down here? I really thought what they are constructing is kind of like a mission that you get later in the game where you build a town up here. It made so much sense to me. I'm still shocked that it didn't end up happening. But it didn't. And I thought that made it so that the Sky Islands overall felt like a little bit of a letdown, but I still like them more than the depths. I think they're carried by the visuals and by the experience that I have with the Thunderhead Isle and the temples. The temples really stand out for me specifically. Now, let's talk about dungeons real quick, as I'm here. So the dungeons, in my opinion, in this game are an improvement, but a letdown at the same time. So, and this ties into another issue that I have, but let's talk about what I mean first with that are an improvement. They are way better themed. The thing that we actually have themes now and not divine beasts that basically look the same 3 times is obviously already a huge upgrade. I think the way they made all of these dungeon quest lines is very cool. Like, you actually have to go on a journey for real this time. You don't just go to the village, attack the divine beast, and then do it, but you start out in the villages, then you go through volcanoes, you climb up low gravity ruins, you fly up flying boats, you defend desert villages, or explore ancient dragon ruins before you actually get to the dungeon part. And I think that's incredibly cool. Let's talk about each of them real quick, actually. So my favorite overall dungeon quest was the Wind Temple. I talked about it before. I think it was a huge spectacle. It was very fun. The temple itself was kind of a letdown. The Water Temple was all right. I enjoyed climbing up here with low gravity. Doing these jumps with the Zora armor was pretty cool. The Ancient Waterworks had a cool kind of like a vibe. I liked finding the Sanctum. In general, Lanayru is like visually one of my favorite areas in the game. Mifa's Court is my favorite area in the game. Visually, it reminds me a lot of Watatsumi Island from Genshin, which some people would probably see or probably hate because of how much they hate Genshin because they stole essentially Breath of the Wild's entire aesthetic when it first released. But I don't want to make this video about Genshin. But I mean, just look at this place; it's absolutely lovely. That's what carried the Water Temple for me, but the temple itself was also kind of underwhelming. Most of the puzzles felt pretty quick to do, and it all culminated in the boss fight that we had already seen in one of the trailers that felt like a little bit of a pushover. The Lightning Temple, in my opinion, I didn't personally enjoy the defend the city quests that much. It felt kinda cool doing it for the first time, but in later playthroughs, if anything, it feels tedious. Well, in later playthroughs, I still enjoy these sections. I still enjoy swimming up the waterfall and jumping up to the Water Temple. I still enjoy climbing up to the Wind Temple. The Lightning Temple feels... the lead up to the Lightning Temple feels a bit boring, but the Lightning Temple itself, casually, was my favorite temple. I really enjoyed the way it felt. It felt like a traditional dungeon. The puzzles felt actually intricate and interesting, and the Lightning Temple itself was my favorite temple. Now, I think the Fire Temple is the most controversial one, because I either hear people say the Fire Temple is their favorite one. I'm getting confused. It's their favorite one or their least favorite one. For me, it was my least favorite one. Now, is it partially because I don't like Unabo because of Breath of the Wild? Maybe. I'm trying to not be biased because of that. So my issue with the Fire Temple ties into another issue I have with this game in general that I already brought up a little bit when it comes to the Great Sky Island, and that's the weird, like their weird, okay, so their philosophy is freedom. They want players to be as free as possible. That means, and what I'm about to do doesn't count, but if you have ways to gain height, you can skip puzzles. Like if I just used a normal rocket shield jump or bomb shield jump, I could have skipped that little bubble puzzle, right? I could have done the bubble puzzle. If there's a sky island and I have a wing, I can fly straight to that island's crystal without doing the small puzzles they've maybe hidden for me. So essentially in this game, what you end up having to do is sometimes you have to intentionally look for the puzzle first. You have to search the puzzle. It's not immediately available to you. You have to find it. The Fire Temple is a great example of this. The leader was pretty cool. I like fighting Moragia. It's a pretty easy boss fight. I don't like that all of the heads are one shot. It's a really cool spectacle to fly around Death Mountain on a plane shooting a giant stone dragon. But that part is cool. Using the minecarts around the mountain feels very epic. Descending down into the depths to find that there's a cool secret city in the depths that the Gorons used to live in is amazing, but I think they tried a little bit too hard. So the problem with the Fire Temple to me is basically that if you are looking for a puzzle, it feels very tedious. You end up looking on your map, trying to figure out how the intricate rail system works. Like you don't know yet how the rails connect to each other, right? Until you sit there on the map and slowly piece it together. Sometimes you have to build specific contraptions to be able to shoot specific switches. You have to build a ramp to shoot Unobo onto those, what's the right word? They're like gongs? You know, like the joom. I'm not sure what they're called in English. I think they're called gongs. And you can spend so much time trying to figure out how that puzzle works, or you fuse a bomb to your shield, and you jump up there, or you climb up there. The game just allows you to do this, and you are in this weird limbo of like, do I want to look at my map for 15 minutes, which is not fun, and get the developers and make sure that I get all of the developers' puzzle, or do I jump, or do I press the X button to climb? You know what I mean? That's my issue, and I think it's cool that they do that at times, right? Like sometimes it leads to some of my favorite moments, being able to cheese a shrine by doing a cool skip that I thought of in the at the time. But I almost wish that when it comes to these big sections of the game, like the dungeons, that they would have used restriction a little bit more. So for example, make the walls in the fire temple not climbable. They clearly already made it so that you can't take out Zonai devices in shrines. They just can't, they just don't allow you to do it. But you can in temples. And why? Because they want to give you, I mean, that one seems a little bit niche, because they clearly don't want to give you the freedom to use Zonai devices in shrines. That was too far for them. But in temples, it's fine. Like, you can skip things there. And I understand that this is all my choice as a player, right? It's my choice to skip it. I am choosing to skip that section of the dungeon by doing, for example, a bomb jump. But that's my issue. I just said, being in that, having that option is the issue. The issue is having the option. Like, I don't know if any of you have ever tried to eat healthy or to lose weight, right? It's much easier to not eat the cookie if you don't have it. If you have a cookie in front of you, it's much easier to want to eat it. I think that's essentially the issue that I have. I really wish they would have restricted us a little bit more as players when it comes to the temples, and the fire temple really showed me that. Like, it was so easy to save yourself a lot of time, and it wasn't fun to look at the map. That's the problem, right? Like, looking at the map and figuring out how the minecarts work is just tedious. So being able to do a jump and move on with the story and explore what the boss is was easier. Again, people have different opinions there. Like, some people thought it wasn't boring to figure out how the minecart system worked, and they liked the fire temple a lot. But because of that, for me, the fire temple was a little bit of a letdown. Now, the spirit temple I already touched on. I thought it was the best build up behind the wind temple. It felt super mysterious, super interesting. I even liked the construct factory. A lot of people didn't like the construct factory, as far as I know. I think the reason that people don't like the construct factory, and I have the same thing, while doing it, it kind of dawned upon me. I was like, this feels suspiciously similar to a dungeon. Am I doing a dungeon right now already? Like, there's gonna be a spirit temple, right? We're looking for the Sage of Spirit. As it turns out, the construct factory really is kind of like the dungeon part. I liked it. I thought it was cool. But the problem is that once you actually reach the spirit temple, you're expecting something entirely different, a new dungeon, and it's just a boss fight. And they did something different there, and it's cool, but I can definitely understand the people that were disappointed by the Spirit Temple just being a glorified boss fight, despite the fact that it's a pretty cool one, right? Oh, by the way, I haven't even talked about this, but when you activate a Sheikah Shrine in this game, I just thought of this. Sorry, a Zonai Shrine, the warp point in front of it is literally the same that the Sheikah Shrines have. Talking more about the Sheikah Zonai connection, like, man, I'm pretty hung up on that point. But that's basically my individual explanation for the dungeons. My favorite one was my favorite quest was the Wind Temple. My favorite dungeon itself was the Lightning Temple. So overall, I think they were an improvement, but I already kind of mentioned the issues that I have with them. All of them feel kind of weak, and I think the biggest problem, and this is going to tie into my number one gameplay problem that I'm suffering from right now, is that they are still structurally the same. They're structurally the same, right? You go to Lookout Landing, you get the quest to go and do the dungeons, you go to the village, you do the dungeon is done by opening 5 terminals, or 4 to 5 terminals. Yes, It's visually different. There is some new stuff going on there, but the structure feels the same. And this is what's biting me, and I'm gonna be just honest about it, it's biting me in the ass right now. Tears of the Kingdom, while being extremely different, feeling fresh and giving me so many cool moments, is structurally very similar to Breath of the Wild. Without being a very faithful sequel at times when it comes to the lore. But so many things feel so similar. There is a tutorial section where you don't have the paraglider. In that section, you have to do 4 shrines. You have to do these 4 shrines in a very strict order. There's no great Sky Island skip. We're going to talk about this later with the speedrunning section. Then you have to, you go to Lookout Landing, basically this game's Kakariko, where you meet Pura, basically this game's Impa, who gives you a quest to do the global phenomena, basically this game's Divine Beast. Then the structure like diverts a little bit. It actually changes in the section where you travel from village to temple. That's new. In the past, like I said, once you reach the village, you attack the Divine Beast with small exceptions. Like, for example, in Gerudo, you have to go to the Yiga hideout first. But usually you attack the Divine Beast, you solve a small problem, you attack the Divine Beast, like, for example, like killing the lion or the main, right? And then you do the Divine Beast. Now, the new part is you actually have to travel there. You have to, like, jump up to the Wind Temple. You have to explore the ruins of the Dragonhead Isle to reach and bring back Minoru's mask to reach the Concept Factory. This is where the structure is different for the first time, and it feels great. In fact, these were my favorite moments in Tears of the Kingdom. If I wanna like put my finger on it, these were my favorite moments. These like new moments of like using the minecart to reach Moragia, jumping up to the Wind Temple, going through the ruins to reach the Spirit Temple, jumping up to the Water Temple. Like these were my favorite moments in Tears of the Kingdom because they were structurally different from Breath of the Wild. I think this is what I'm only realizing now, and this means that I didn't even know there was a Lionel here until right now. By the way, and that means even now in speedruns, it's very easy to feel like you're playing Breath of the Wild, but you're not. Obviously, like I'm not saying this is Breath of the Wild DLC or whatever. And everything is new, like you're doing different things, but they feel the same. You're still doing 5 terminals. You're still going to the village and talk to a guy, right? And that's kind of sad. You're still doing shrines. You're still opening them, entering the door, and touching something at the end where you press A. Like the structure is so similar. And that's, I think, in my opinion, gonna be an issue for the game's longevity. Maybe this is just me, because I played so much Breath of the Wild. And I will talk about this more later, which is why I haven't been doing a lot of videos. I have only been doing some speedruns and stuff. But I feel like I've already got burnt out of this game as much as I looked forward to it so much. And lots of you will be like, of course, you played Breath of the Wild 200 days every single day before this game came out. You made videos about it. Of course you're gonna be burnt out. And yes, that makes sense to me. It makes sense. But I think the main reason I feel that burnout so much is because it feels structurally, in terms, even though you do different things, like yes, you do water temples this time, but structurally it's the same. Tutorial, hub, dungeons, castle. And the problem is, I'll talk about this with speedruns more. The speedruns are structurally the same. Because, yes, casually you do all of these cool things in between. You figure out the depths, you figure out the caves. I'm gonna talk about speedruns more later, so I don't want to talk about this yet. But like, for example, any percent in Breath of the Wild was, you do the Great Sky Island, you do the shrines, you do the castle. Breath of the Wild, you do the plateau, you go straight to castle. Like, it's the same thing again. Like, yes, you do different things, but the structure is the same. I really wish they would have made it so that, for example, you had to get the Master Sword this time. Temples do work differently. Like, maybe you have to do things on the surface, find specific things on the surface to solve the temple in the sky, and it's not terminals this time. Like, I will talk more about my wishes for Zelda's future after this game at the end. But I just wanted to say, gameplay-wise, I think one of my issues, and my number one issue that's really making it hard for me to play as much Tears of the Kingdom as I thought I would want to, is that structurally it does feel a lot like Breath of the Wild in many different moments. I want to talk about some nitpicky things of gameplay right now, before I move on to the speedrun sections and the future of Zelda in a second here. I already touched on one of them, gameplay-wise. What still bothers me is the game's quick menu. It's not only of how much it has slowed down, but it's mainly when it comes to fusing. In this file here, I don't have that many items, but even then, it can already take quite a long time to find an item that I want to fuse to my arrow. Every time I shoot that item that I fused to my arrow, I have to press D-pad again to refuse that specific item. If I want to throw an item, sometimes I have to scroll for 30 seconds until I actually throw the item that I want to. Yes, there's a sword button to speed that feature up a little bit, but it still makes it so that for the most part, you spend a lot of time in that quick menu. It makes it so that cool things like combat montages in Breath of the Wild, you've probably seen, and they're really impressive, have actually become a lot more rare because a lot of the combat montages have to use this feature very, very much, and it kind of breaks up the pace a lot. Like, if you see combat montages for Tears of the Kingdom, for example, Peko has uploaded some stuff before. He was a legendary combat player in Breath of the Wild. You'll see them actually having to make cuts and edits to edit out the quick menu because of how much it breaks up the pace, like the pacing of these cool combat clips. And I think that's unfortunate. I would have... I don't know another solution. Like, I don't know what the solution would have been. But I feel like there had to be something else to make fusing... Like, even if it's just like, once you fuse something to your arrow, it stays fused to it. You don't have to fuse it every single time. Maybe they wanted to do that so that you don't unintentionally shoot 2 topaz arrows. But it ended up feeling a little bit bad. Maybe I'm not like getting the point across right, but I think you know what I mean. Like the quick menu can feel like too much when you're throwing items. I wish there was another way, or when you're fusing items, it feels like it breaks up the pace of combat a lot. Another thing is that I was a little bit disappointed about the balance of this game. What I mean by this is that I was actually low-key hoping that they would change bullet time a little bit. This is mainly just because, like I said this before, like, yes, I can choose to use different combat techniques, but as somebody who likes speedrunning, I will obviously most of the time choose whatever is the most effective. It's a little bit of a shame for me personally that bows are so overpowered, especially now. Technically, actually, there's something that's even more overpowered in some runs. This is what you're seeing right here, the message not found. Maybe you've seen videos about this before. It's a stolen Master Sword from the intro that you can kind of modify to do 60 damage per swing, and you can then do something called Zuggling, where you can basically like one-shot every enemy in the game. Of course, there's always going to be broken stuff. I personally, this is a nitpicking thing, like I said, I wished bullet time would have at least stayed the same. Like, I don't think it needed a buff. I see why they did it for the mid-air combat, which is not used that much. It basically just made it so that bullet time is broken in combat. Especially with now super easy ways to get bullet time anywhere, like the wing shield. You fight a Gleeok, you jump, you just shoot it in the eye 3 times. Because you have super easy bullet time access, and as long as you have a strong weapon, it's just a DPS check instead of a more interesting fight. That's again, like I said, a nitpicky issue, and this is only me, somebody who plays this game a lot. I think, especially against enemies like Gleeoks, your average casual player is gonna need every help that they can, because these guys are actually difficult for... I mean, I got rolled by the first Gleeok I fought, so yeah. But I just wanted to mention that. Let me look at my notes here. I went over... Oh, another small nitpicky thing is I don't have a one-hand weapon here, but maybe you have noticed that yourself. Hammer weapons in this game, one-hand hammer weapons. For example, if you fuse like most of the frog's horns to a one-hand weapon, you get this hammer moveset. So there's 2 movesets. There's the spear. And sorry, there's sword, where you actually swing the sword. And there's a one-hand hammer, where you, I think a club does the same thing, where you kind of swing it quickly. Unfortunately, you can't fuse to the message not found, otherwise I would have shown you. That's kind of broken. Like, sometimes the hitbox doesn't work. If you ever fought enemies a lot with one-hand hammer weapons, maybe you've noticed it yourself that sometimes hits don't register. Small, super small, nitpicky thing. And one thing that I was always confused about, and it's actually funny because the message not found has a damage value written to it. I still don't really know why they removed the damage number at the Master Sword. There couldn't be a smaller nitpicky thing than that. I don't know if anyone knows. I would be interested to know. the Master Sword in this game, the real one that you get from the Light Dragon, doesn't have a damage number, which is weird because you click the menu, it shows you the damage number of the fused item that you fused to it. Is it because it can power up, but other weapons have dynamic weapon modifiers, like the Desperate Strength number actually changes when you are on 1 HP. So why couldn't the Master Sword not have a 30 damage thing that changes to 60 when you're next to Gloom? It's super small, super nitpicky. I just don't understand why they removed it. Maybe there's a cool reason that I didn't figure out yet. If you know, let me know. But anyway, that's pretty much my thoughts on gameplay that I had written down. There's more. If somebody asked me, I could probably say even more, but this video is already over 2 hours, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's getting close to 3 hours at this point. But I want to talk about speedrunning in this last section because it's a very special, very dear topic to me personally, as that's kind of like my main thing that I do with the game. I enjoy speedrunning these games. Playing these games optimally is what's fun to me. It was fun to me in Breath of the Wild, especially because of the movement techniques like wind bombs. Now, let me talk about the biggest issue that the speedrun of Tears of the Kingdom is facing that I struggle with, and a lot of other runners struggle with, that make this a less fun speed game than we were hoping. And I actually teleported to the wrong point to explain it, but I can talk about it, and that's gonna be the intro. The intro is cool the first time you do it. It's maybe cool the second time you do it, and maybe the third time you do it, you still think the cutscene of Ganondorf waking up is cool. But once you do it for the 10th time, the 20th, the 50th, and maybe the 100th. 100? Wait, how do you say that? The 100? Probably not. Time number 100. It starts getting annoying, right? And the problem is that the cutscene that you watch during the intro is a 4-minute cutscene that you cannot skip. This means every single speedrun in Tears of the Kingdom starts with a 7-minute intro where all you do is run down some stairs. So you do that every single run, 7 minutes, you wake up in the Room of Awakening, and then you immediately do one of the hardest jumps in the game. This is called CS, or cog skip, with a G and not a CK, because you skip the wheel. You skip the wheel. You can actually skip pressing A here on the dragons. It will make these wheels start turning, and it will open the door in front of you, which you are meant to use to run out. But what you can do is you can run on this wheel to jump up to this ledge and then run out of this door where the recoil shrine is to enter the intro not only earlier, but also pick up a chest with wings. What does that do? I will probably mess it up right here because it's a difficult trick, and that's exactly the issue. It's a difficult trick. So the reason that's an issue is if you fail this trick, let's say 3 times, you have to reset. If you don't know what resetting is, it means you have to start your run again. So you start your run, you watch 7 minutes of cutscenes, and then you immediately do this hard jump. If you fail, okay, also I'm just not doing the inputs correctly. If you fail, you watch the 7-minute intro again. So there's a chance that once you reach top level in speedruns, your streams of attempts will be 1 hour spent of watching the unskippable cutscene at the start and doing this jump. If you can't get the jump, your entire stream, then you're stuck here. Also, this is probably the worst weapon to do this with because I shoot a beam every time. It doesn't really matter. The jump is a thing. Normally you do it with the broken Master Sword and not this one. But you can see me, I'm already struggling to get it a single time, also with the pressure of recording. But essentially, you do this jump, and there's a chance that you fail. I currently keep failing. I don't know if it works any differently with the real Master Sword than the small Master Sword. But this is not where the issues end. You can see my runs, I do get this jump, usually. This is not where the issues end. The issues with pacing become much, much more apparent. So you do this jump, you walk here, you can't enter the recoil shrine yet, the Nachoya shrine, because it only opens after you do the first 3 shrines on the Great Sky Island. And get the teleport feature unlocked. Before this is just closed, and you can clip into the shrine this time. If you do, there's no loading zone in there. So you go there, you get the wings, and then you watch the second intro. After you've watched the 7-minute cutscene and did the hard jump, you jump down here, and the intro, the opening plays, right? The music, another minute cutscene plays, and you dive down into this pond. Then you have to get the Pura Pet. If you don't get the Pura Pet, right over there, and you try to go anywhere else on the Great Sky Island, you will simply void out. That means Link will do like, and spawn back up on this island here. So you go over here, you get the Pura Pet. By that time, you have played the game for 11 minutes if you're fast. 11 minutes of gameplay, right? So you get the Pura Pet, now you can finally go wherever you want. That still means you can't enter shrines. Because like I said, you can't clip into shrines, you have to actually enter them. And the only way to enter shrines is by going to the door here. On the, what is it called? Temple of Time. So what we do in runs is we fly there with a wing that we have previously picked up from the Room of Awakening and open the door from the wing. This allows us to, after opening the door, jump down, which will once again void us out, like, and Link will spawn over here again, because he has never touched the ground on his flight from this island to the door. So we basically teleport back here for free. Then, we run over here, we fly over here, run up the cave, and enter Ascent, the first shrine in the speedrun. When you enter Ascent, you are greeted with a cutscene of Rauru giving you the first ability, and when you finish Ascent, you get another 50-second cutscene that explains to you what the Light of Blessings are. Top-level speedruns finish the Ascent Shrine in 16 minutes and 30 seconds. You know where the Breath of the Wild run on top pace is at 16 minutes and 30 seconds? It's about to fight the final boss. It's about to enter the Blights very soon. That is a huge issue. The pacing of this run, compared to Breath of the Wild, which is obviously a target audience for speedrunners, right? A lot of Breath of the Wild speedrunners were excited to run this game. By the time you finish the first shrine in this game in a speedrun, the Breath of the Wild speedrun has finished 4 shrines, obtained the paraglider, moved to Hyrule Castle, and went through all of Hyrule Castle to prepare for the boss fights. That's an issue. Let me give you another example when it comes to the slow pacing of how this game is made. And by the way, this is a me problem. This game shouldn't be designed to cater for speedrunners. I'm ranting because I'm a speedrunner. I'm giving you my issues with the game. You can obviously say, this is not designed for speedrunners, not your problem. Well, it is my problem, but it's not yours. And that's completely fine. Like, this game doesn't deserve criticism from everyone because of this. I'm ranting what my issues for speedruns are. I do think it's weird how, and I will talk about potential sequence breaks in a bit, I do think it's weird how much they tried to restrict players on the tutorials. Like, there are a lot of things where it almost seems like they were specifically trying to target speedrunners. Like, I don't know why you can skip the first intro cutscene, right? Like, I don't know why. There's no reason that you can't do it. In Breath of the Wild, after you played the game for the first time, you can start skipping the cutscene, which would have been great. It would have been just a nice little help for the speedrunners. Instead, what Nintendo did, they patched out some of the tricks that we were using, which is fine. We'll get to that later. I just want to talk about one more pacing issue, just that you understand how big the problem of pacing is in this game. And in fact, there's 2 more. The next one that I want to talk about is another comparison. By the time you finish the Great Sky Island, this entire section, right, in this game, in the speedrun, you have spent around, in an all dungeon speedrun, which is the run where you do all of the dungeons, right, all of the temples in this game. In this game, on a good run, 33 minutes have passed. You've played the game for 33 minutes. In those 33 minutes, you've done the intro, you've beaten the shrines, right? By that time, in a Breath of the Wild all dungeon speedrun, you enter Gerudo Town. What does that mean? That means you have already completed the Great Plateau, went to Hyrule Castle, set up a glitch that gives you 999 ancient arrows, done the entire first dungeon, and traveled from the first dungeon to the second. that is how bad the pacing on the Great Sky Island is. Because you do the intro, you get the Pura Pet, you go here, you have to do the first 3 shrines, you go here again, you get recall, you open the door, then you do recall, then you go back here, and then you finally finish. Now the problem is when you finish, you don't even get the paraglider. In Breath of the Wild, at least you get the paraglider. This is another pacing issue that the speedrun has. You can feel that I'm heated about this because I care about the speedrun, and it's unfortunate that it turned out to be this way. But in order to get the paraglider, we have to go to Lookout Landing in this game. And not only do we have to go to Lookout Landing, we have to talk to Pura, go to Hyrule Castle, go back to Lookout Landing, open the first tower, watch a cutscene, have the first tower shoot us. Actually, technically, you don't have to have the tower shoot you up. You can get the paraglider before the tower shoots you up and leave. But it takes like 40 minutes or so to get the paraglider, where in Breath of the Wild, in a good run, you could get it in 13. It's unfortunate that pacing in this game feels slow. And it's not like the tricks are easy. That's another big issue. Like the first split in Ascent, even like that wing ride to reach the Temple of Time here can be difficult. And if you fail it, you lose a lot of time. So you might be stuck watching the 7-minute intro again. And if you watch the 7-minute intro again and you get the jump, then you watch the cutscenes again of diving down and getting the Pura Pet for another 3 minutes. It's unfortunate. It's currently not a very fun speedrun to grind because of these issues. There's thankfully already some cool speedrunning glitches in the game. Like the rocket glitch that I keep showing off. It's actually pretty fun to control. For me personally, by the way, just to like make sure that you understand this, my favorite thing in these speed games is the movements. I enjoy moving through the stage or the level quickly like this. It feels satisfying to do. But unfortunately, it takes quite a long time in the speed game currently until you're able to do that. Yeah. In general, I don't know. It really seems like the developers at some point tried to make it difficult for speedrunners. Not only, and I will talk about, like I said, the potential sequence breaks here a little bit. But before I do that, I want to talk about the biggest issue that we face other than the pacing in speedruns, and that's the version differences. It all kind of ties together. So it seems like the developers tried initially to, this is probably me living in my own world, like maybe there's a good reason that the intro cutscene isn't skippable, even though, like, I would understand if like they don't want players to miss the story, but every other cutscene is skippable. Cutscenes with way bigger story reveals are skippable. Like the first cutscene is kind of just like a whole mystery, and in Breath of the Wild the first cutscene also wasn't skippable, but the second time you play it becomes skippable. It's weird. It's almost like they wanted to discourage players from going too fast. Additionally, they ended up patching a lot of the early speedrun glitches that were found. Now, this is completely fair. I know a lot of people don't like glitches to begin with. There was this very popular glitch that I can still do right now because I have an earlier version of the game, which is a hassle to get. And unfortunately, it's really annoying for new community members that want to speedrun the game, who want to speedrun it optimally. But in order to speedrun it optimally, they have to have an older version. The number one thing that this version has is the fast duping. It's broken. If you hold 5 items when you glide or shield jump, you can press X and B at the same time. And I literally just made 5 large zonite charges for free. Again, it also works on the shield jump. Like, I have 12 large charges. Now I have 17. By pressing like a couple of buttons. It makes the speedrun routing very interesting in my opinion, that you can they're not restricted by resources. Newer versions don't have that glitch, making for a completely different speedrun. Newer versions don't have this rocket glitch that I keep using for fun to move around, making it so that newer versions of the speedrun can't go as quickly. That basically makes it so that the community is split between people who don't have any ways to get the old version, who don't want to run with glitches, and people who want to run with the ideal version. I understand that we are very spoiled we were very spoiled in Breath of the Wild. Because in Breath of the Wild, the fastest version was also the newest version. Everyone was in an even playing field. They could just decide if they want to use the glitches or not. Where in this game, everything is kind of split and different people run on different versions, and it kind of holds the community back a little bit to work on the optimal route because so many people are doing so many different things, and it's unfortunate, at least in my opinion currently. There's other things the developers seemed to have done to prevent people from going as fast. Like, obviously, they patched out all of the glitches from Breath of the Wild. And again, glitches are one thing. And I know a lot of people don't like glitches, but a good example is the paraglider. There's actually a lot of ways for us to launch really fast in this game, but they made sure that the paraglider always has a kept max speed. If you get launched extremely far, for example, from a recall launch that I talked about briefly earlier, or anything in the game, if you open your paraglider, it slows you down on a base speed. That paraglider speed cap is annoying. In Breath of the Wild, that didn't exist. In Breath of the Wild, if you were launching from something like a BTB, a bullet time bounce, and you open your paraglider would carry that momentum. And that was incredibly fun. In my opinion, that was the reason that Breath of the Wild speedrun movement was so fun. That's the reason. Because you could ride the paraglider at such insane speeds. You were like flying around Hyrule. And you can still do that, but it doesn't feel the same. And unfortunately, because of that speed cap, no matter what launching glitch we find in the future, it's incredibly unlikely that we get anything like Breath of the Wild in the future. I would be happy to be proven wrong, but it's a little bit unfortunate that it seems to be a block on the road. And speaking of potential stuff in the future, I do want to talk about sequence breaks real quick. In Breath of the Wild, the big sequence break was always the potential Great Plateau skip. And if we had a way to skip the Great Sky Island, that would basically make all of the issues of pacing that I just talked about obsolete. Now, we were actually talking about something. The Great Sky Island has an interesting mechanic, which is the Temple of Time has a door, right? A door that only opens when you have 4 hearts. When you open the door, the light on the platform at the end appears, and when you talk to that light, you send the Master Sword back in time, and you can do whatever you please. You can explore Hyrule to your heart's content. Now, we thought we might have a chance, because we have a way to smuggle the Master Sword from the intro into the main game. We had an idea. What if we could smuggle a heart from the intro to the main game? This is not unheard of. Things like that kind of worked in Breath of the Wild. Would that mean that we could just clip into the Temple of Time and then interact with the door to open it and skip the entire thing? The answer is we can't. Unfortunately, they were so secure when it comes to sequence breaks on the Great Sky. Unfortunately for speedrunners. If you don't get the Pura Pet, you can't go anywhere else in the Great Sky Island. Once you get the Pura Pet, you can't do anything other than interact with the door of the Temple of Time for the first time, which will open up the shrines. You can't ascend through the bottom of the Temple of Time, but we have actually recently managed to clip in. We were able to clip into the Temple of Time, but the developers knew we were gonna do that. They didn't put the recall ability there until you open the door officially. So they knew, they made it so that you can't ascend in, but even if you clip in, they just remove the recall container and not ability. And not only that, you can't interact with the final door until you get recall. But actually, until you open the door after you have the light blessings. So you have to open the first door the right way, which is only possible by having 3 light blessings. Actually, I don't even know at this point if you have to get specifically the ones from the Great Sky Island. Currently, you can't go anywhere else anyway. And then the door opens, then recall spawns, and then you could open the last door. So the only potential sequence break right now, which is still not going to be very fast, is if we could somehow get a heart from the intro to the game. After getting recall, we could open the door instead of having to return up here and do the final shrine. It would still probably save some time, and it would be exciting for the speedrun, but it wouldn't destroy the big pacing issue at the start. The issue of having to play the game for 16 minutes before even entering the first shrine. So it's looking a bit grim. It seems like the developers were intentionally kind of getting revenge for the speedrunners of breaking Breath of the Wild so much. That being said, and I want to end this on a positive note, okay? There's hope. I think this game has good potential for the future. We need to remember, Breath of the Wild started off extremely slow. A lot of glitches for Tears of the Kingdom were found early on, right? Things like the rocket glitch, things like the auto build glitch I showed earlier, things like the duping. So the developers patched them because they were still trying to sell their game and they probably didn't want people to see their game in a broken state. We are in the early days, right? At the end of the day, we are in the early days. And I really think there's hope for this game. Why do I think there's hope for this game? I think there's so many cool mechanics. We have the cool rocket jump already. One of my favorite ways of moving ever in the game, the dive feature, not this one, feels incredibly satisfying. I love the way of moving horizontally in this game by using the dive. We have the auto build tech, we have the fast duping, at least on the early versions. In the future we'll always be able to make as many ferries as we want, as many topas as we want. We have ways to fight enemies quickly. I think the potential for the speed game is technically there. Who knows what the future holds? I think there is some issues making me look at it a little bit skeptical. Those pacing issues, those paraglider speed issues, they seem unsolvable on paper. But who knows? The community has shown incredible things before when it comes to Breath of the Wild. This game has only been out for 5 days. And, you know, I think the phase I am going to right now with this game, and maybe some of you watching this video are going through right now, is a phase that a lot of us went through with Breath of the Wild as well. It started out being this incredibly promising, incredibly interesting, fun game. Then probably because the structure feels similar to Breath of the Wild, maybe it's maybe we got burnt out a little bit. Maybe some of you are not burnt out at all and they're loving still every second of it. But I don't know if all of you have played it as much as I have done. And right now, I'm kind of starting to see the downsides of the game. But as I keep going, I've actually recently went back to Breath of the Wild and I realized, yes, Breath of the Wild has a lot of things going for it when it comes to the speedrun, especially pacing-wise, that make it special and interesting. But this game does have so many advantages. It's so much fuller. There's so much more going on. There's so much more interesting content. And even though the sequence is different, who knows what the future holds for this game. And I'm sure that in 2 years, 3 years, once you wait for the next Zelda game, this is going to be the game we are most likely going to be revisiting. This is going to be the game that's going to still change drastically with the speedrun. And I think there's a lot of potential for it. And even though I think there is downsides for this game that I can now more clearly see after having played it for a long time, I think this rant shows it pretty well. A lot of the thoughts that I have, a lot of the thoughts that I'm probably currently forgetting. I think the future for this game is bright. I think it is an amazing game. I think it has potential. Will it live up to what Breath of the Wild did? I think no, and I hope no. I think a big reason that made the Breath of the Wild speedrunning journey special was that it, for many of us, and for me too at the time, acted as a nice distraction from the pandemic, right? It was at a time where a lot of people wanted to revisit some of our favorite games. Breath of the Wild was really special when it came out. The pandemic acted as a perfect way to do so, and doing that through a speedrun was a cool way to do so. I hope there's no global pandemic in the future that is going to force us to do the same thing with Tears of the Kingdom. But I think nonetheless, this game is going to have... does have a bright future ahead of it, mainly because it's kind of like the ultimate version from Breath of the Wild. If people want to revisit this iteration of Zelda, this open world Zelda formula, this is probably the game they're going to do it with, which is going to make it so that the speedrun is only going to grow. The game is going to be more optimized, and there's going to be more to show because there's just more content in this game, more caves, more shrines, more temples, more stuff. I didn't do a great job summarizing my thoughts there. What I think is that I want to be optimistic when it comes to this game because I love it and there's so many things I love about it, and I'm gonna stay optimistic. Also, the Blood Moon in this game is really cool. I'm just thinking about this. I love Zelda's voice acting during the Blood Moon. Anyway, that's kind of like my initial statement when it comes to that. I do want to briefly talk about my plans for Tears of the Kingdom, what I have planned for the channel, before I talk about my hopes for Zelda's future. Keep your eyes open on this channel because I am currently working on some commentated speedrun videos. Again, despite the fact that this game has issues, I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on with some specific categories. I think the All Dungeon speedrun is one of the already most technical, cool speedruns. I want to show off this run here in the future. I'm currently grinding for a good time that I want to showcase on the channel, where I'm going to explain all of the different speed tech, all of the different things that we do in order to do all of the dungeons in this game in under 3 hours. And I am also working on another speedrun. Some of you might remember the all Lionel speedrun I did in Breath of the Wild. That was something that did pretty well. People enjoyed seeing some of the most difficult enemies destroyed really quickly. This game, I am going to do an all Gleox speedrun. I think Gleox kind of have like taken the #1 spot for the scary enemy in this game. This includes the King Gleox, it includes all Gleox. I think it's a very cool, actually short and fast-paced run that shows off some different facets of the game. Fast-paced movement, you will never get the paraglider, and shows some very optimal ways to destroy Gleox, and a pretty quick travel throughout Hyrule. So those are the 2 speedruns I have planned. Eventually, I will focus on all shrines again. If you want to see my journey to do all of the shrines quickly, I will be posting that once I get a good run on this YouTube channel, obviously, and you will probably catch me on my Twitch channel doing those runs. That being said, I will also be checking out some other speed games, if I'm being honest. Mario Wonder is coming out very soon. That's something I want to check out. If people know this channel, if you scroll back on the LibCube channel to the start, my beginnings are a Mario Odyssey speedrunner. That's what I used to do. So I can't wait to check out Mario Wonder more. And potentially the next 3D Mario when it comes out. And if you also watch my, like, every video on this channel, you would know that I have speedrun Elden Ring in the past, and I made some Elden Ring videos. Elden Ring is getting DLC eventually, so that's another speed game I want to revisit. But Tears of the Kingdom is still going to be my main thing. I think there's a lot of cool speedruns to show off, and I'm still optimistic for the game's future. Especially once we get the new Zelda generation and we are eventually moving on to the next Zelda game in the future. Which, by the way, once the next Zelda game does get announced, I will bring back the daily LimCube Plus videos, even if it takes 400 days. So if you haven't subscribed to LimCube Plus, don't do it right now, because there won't be any content on the channel. But if you want to do anyway, and so you see a video that comes out when the next Zelda game is announced, and then like 400, 500 videos until it's out, I will do it. I will do it. And I'm expecting the next Zelda game to be completely different. And I want to briefly talk about it, because that's probably the question I get asked about the most at the moment. So I briefly want to mention what I think is, what my hopes are for the next Zelda game. Do I want them to revisit this Hyrule again? No, absolutely not. I think this Hyrule has been filled to the brim, and I've seen enough of it. I don't know how they would be able to fill this Hyrule for the 3rd time. Apparently there was an interview recently that confirmed that they won't be taking this approach. Maybe it was clickbait on the journalist's end. Now, however, I do love this Link. This version of Link and Zelda are my favorite ever. I feel like I like them a lot, specifically because I've spent so much time with this Link. This is just my Link, you know. So I wouldn't mind if they brought this Link and Zelda back, but in a completely different world. Now, when it comes to actual gameplay loops, I think things have to change. There's no way, like, yes, they can make it open world or whatever, but there's no way we can do the go to 4 temples and press 5 switches again, in my opinion, and the start on an island and then go through the main world again. Like, if they do that, I feel like even for casual players, it's gonna start feeling boring. Like, for speedrunners, not even to talk about speedrunners, like, speedrunners are already getting bored because of the structure of this game, but especially when it comes to even casual players, I would probably start to get bored if it was that structure again. Now, what would I think would be a good structure? The way I put it, the way that I think the Zelda formula could reinvent themselves one more time, and obviously I'm not a Zelda game designer because I am bad at it, or at least I've never tried, but what I think would be cool is if we combined this open world Zelda formula with a little bit of a Metroidvania approach and the original Zelda formula. So how would that look like? So imagine it's this Hyrule, but in order to reach the Wind Temple, you have to have done a specific area in the depths first, where you get a grappling hook. Only once you get the grappling hook, you can reach the top of the Wind Temple. Or, alternatively, so this is basically kind of tapping into Hollow Knight. Alternatively, there are a special pair of boots in a mysterious cave in Elden. I'm just using this game as an example, right? It would be a completely different world that you can find that will also allow you to get up to the Wind Temple. Basically, make it open world, but restrict us a little bit more. allow us to do things out of order, but don't allow us to do like everything. Don't allow us to go to the final boss right away. Make it feel like you actually have to work your way there. Make it feel like you have to become stronger. Like, yes, you inevitably become stronger as you make your way to Ganondorf, but you can clearly just go there and beat that guy if you want to. But like, require the player to grow more, require him to find specific abilities, require him to find specific weapons. Again, kind of think of like Metroidvania meets open world Zelda. Make dungeons be a little bit more restrictive again. Give us the boss key. Like, even if it's just to get those 1,000 people that want the boss key back, like, just give us a chest of the boss key. Like, I feel like everyone that likes this way of Zelda, everyone that likes open world, wouldn't be mad if we get a boss key and you just make 1,000, like 10,000 people happy with it. Give us mini bosses in the dungeons. Like, I don't think anyone would be mad. Keep the open world approach. Mix in some progression. Like, I think traditional progression feels really good. Progression that's not just, I've done 70 shrines instead of 60 now. Like, yeah, give us permanent upgrades that are not just like your battery is bigger, but like a double jump, a grappling hook. And if I wanted to mix in one other mechanic, I think again, and you're probably sick of me if you do watch my second channel, if you watch my stream, twitch.tv/limcube, where I'm probably live right now when you're watching this video, and if you listen to this entire raid, chances are you would enjoy hanging out over at my Twitch channel. Because that's essentially what I'm doing over there. And if you want to talk about this game, that's the place to go. If you want to ask me questions, if you want to tell me what you think, I will listen to you. I will give you my response right there. Yeah, chances are, you've heard me talk about Outer Wilds. I think Outer Wilds' approach to game design is so incredibly special and beautiful, and I think it would work well in a Zelda game. So Outer Wilds' approach to game design is essentially, in order to progress through some things, you need to understand the rules of the world. And sometimes this is true in Breath of the Wild. Like, in order to make it past the climb... it's actually not, though. That's the issue. Like, in order to make it past the ships over here, you need to understand that you can jump off the ships, but you don't, because you can technically build a Zonai, whatchamacallit, you can technically build a Zonai hovercraft and fly up there, right? And you can skip all of the puzzles. And in Outer Wilds, you can't brute force things. If you want to beat the game for the first things, you have to learn the rules of the world, or get like lottery levels of lucky. And even then it wouldn't work. Like, seriously. Like, if you played Outer Wilds, you know what I mean. Like, make us learn things about the world and reward us for understanding them. Make us learn the lore of the depths and use that knowledge in a different location in the game, where if you have that knowledge... A classic example, dude. My favorite thing as a kid was finding out how to get Reggie Ice myself. By figuring out that the thing on the door is like, I think it was like, I don't know the English word of whatever, whatever the sign is, the sign, the dotted languages, I think it's like Brill something, Brilliere, I don't know. Basically what vision impaired people use to read, right? Figuring that out by yourself and then opening that door and being rewarded with this amazing legendary Pokemon felt so cool. And like getting that sort of experience in the Zelda game, like exploring the depths, learning some lore of the depths, and using that knowledge to get past a door that you can only open casually once you've learned this lore. Instead of, like, for example, the Minoru door. Let's use the Minoru door. Instead of using the Minoru door and making it a 10 heart check, make it some sort of like quiz or some sort of riddle that, like, you have to stand on a platform with a certain weapon equipped, and don't put a platform there. Don't put a platform up there that says stand here with a glowing sword and the path will open. Don't do that. Just make it an interesting looking room with nothing else, and scatter evidences or like riddles across the depths that you can encounter to be able to stand there, to learn what you need to do to stand there, to have the door open, and then hide something really cool behind it. That's how I would like add I would use the Outer Wilds Outer Wilds approach to game design, add it to the Zelda formula to make it, in my opinion, more appealing. Maybe some people would think that's lame. They just want to press A button with 10 hearts and open the door. But if I was adding some of my wishes to the game, that's what I would add. Okay, I am getting my voice is dying. I have just talked for 2 hours and 50 minutes without any signs of a break. I've just talked and talked and talked. And there's not going to be any outro to this. There's not going to be a fancy outro. This is the spirit of this video. This was a almost 3-hour rant about Tears of the Kingdom. If you are here right now, why? Why? Why have you listened to me for 3 hours? But seriously, if you are here with me now, I really appreciate it. I would probably do the same. I really enjoy people's thoughts of this game because at the end of the day, it's really special to me. So thank you for listening. I would really appreciate if you shared some of your thoughts maybe about the game. Maybe just a small comment about something that you thought I said that you agree or disagree with. Because I want to know if I'm alone. If I'm talking against... Well, I know that I'm not with some of the criticisms, obviously. But when it comes to my hopes for the game, when it comes to... Maybe you've watched some speedruns, you've noticed the pacing issues. Maybe you've understood the lore better than me in places and you can help me understand that maybe actually increase my appreciation for this game even more. But that being said, if you made it to the end of the video, I appreciate you very much. There's going to be full on, like, real scripted videos again. Like I said, there's going to be a... all dungeons explained and all Glurks explained speedrun. And then I will kind of, like... explore my plans for Tears of the Kingdom a little bit, or maybe make some videos on other games. Challenge runs in this game haven't really interested me that much yet, but I am working on some pretty impossible ideas at the moment. I think we need a little bit more tech to make them possible and make them really interesting for me, because if you watched my All Shrine speedrun in Breath of the Wild, All Shrines, No Runes video in the past, I am mostly interested to things that look like really impossible. But yeah, that being said, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening to me. I will see you in the next video. This was my rant from a Breath of the Wild Superfan about Tears of the Kingdom for almost 3 hours. I will figure out the minutes in a bit. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.